I was shocked when my boyfriend erased my novel ideas after 3 years, our relationship on the brink of collapse. Original post. I've been working on a novel for about a year. I write every day, even just a sentence. 6 months ago my college switched to smartboards and put all their whiteboards in the garbage. I grabbed 2 because I have a huge wall space open in my living room. Most of my writing is done on my Google Drive, but I have things like character personalities, names, places, a general timeline, etc. You know, stuff I want to remember. I used to take photos of it so I had my ideas with me. I used to write on my lunch break. I stopped doing that because I burned myself out and my writing quality takes a huge dive. Plus my boyfriend helps me write and it helps us connect in such a deep way. So I haven't taken a photo in about 3 months. The whiteboards are nice because I can read my notes across the room while I'm sitting in my favorite chair. I got home last night and all of my stuff was erased. It was all a train of thought. Like I'd come home and jot something down. Handwriting is way more cathartic for me. I had sketches of things in the novel. I'd basically have to go through and remember every single thing on it. I have a lot of it stored in my head or on my Google Drive, but there are some things I'll never get back. But it's the fact he erased it. We don't live together. He told me I've been focusing too much on it and have no time for him. We hang out at my house 5-6 nights a week. I write while he plays video games. It's a good dynamic and I thought we enjoyed it. We are always laughing and he helps me with my wording and I Google stuff to help him in his game. This is the first time he's mentioned it bothering him. If he had brought it up, we could have talked about it, but he went nuclear and I have no idea why. I don't know what to do. I'm so frustrated. We have had one serious argument over his driving. He got better. My family took him on vacation a few weeks ago. We watch his nephew all the time. His family paid for my entire spring semester. We are so much a part of each other's lives and I feel so hurt and heartbroken. He's my muse and just the other day we went to the jewelry store to look at rings. My feelings rotate between rage, sadness, confusion, sorrow, anger, everything. How do I even approach this? Last night I was so upset I asked him to leave. He hasn't texted, he hasn't called, he hasn't stopped by. I keep typing in questions to ask but I keep erasing them. Why did you do it? Are you unhappy with our relationship? What did I do? I'm even more heartbroken due to the fact he hasn't called or texted all day. I'm afraid to call him. I don't want to hear him say he thinks we should break up, or he doesn't want to be with me when I'm writing. Or just ignore my call. TLDR, boyfriend erased the whiteboard I use for my novel writing. He hasn't contacted me at all since it happened. I'm totally lost and heartbroken and angry. How do I possibly handle this? Top comment. 4B3ATS, holy crap. As a fellow writer, I'd be livid if I were you. This is the first time he's mentioned it bothering him. If this is true, and he jumped straight to sabotage, this is fucked up. It's messed up regardless because I'm sure your boyfriend knows how important this work is to you. Like, for him to not try to talk to you about this, after 3 years, is mind-boggling. Who does this? Text him the dreaded "we need to talk" message. Ask him when he's available, and have him come over to use his words like a goddamn adult. Also, take his key away or change your locks if you don't want to be that upfront about it. He lost his privileges. TBH though, in all sincerity, IDK if this is something I could move past. It comes off as so cruel. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he chose to go into your home when you weren't there because he knew he was doing something wrong. He either knows he fucked up, or he feels as though he's in the right, and that's why he hasn't reached out to you. I'm shocked and appalled on your behalf, OP. Relevant comments. The darkest beer. This was an unbelievably fucked up way to deal with those feelings. I hate your boyfriend right now. Remember in Little Women when Amy burns Joe's book because Joe wouldn't let her come to the theater with her? That was pretty messed up, but ultimately Amy was a child, and she would grow up and be better. Your boyfriend can't do better than the most hated March sister. He's showing you that when he doesn't get his way, he will punish you and destroy the things you care about. This isn't an isolated incident. It's an important piece of information about his character. If he comes back with a massive apology and a plan for how he's going to deal with his feelings in the future in a non-destructive way, then maybe I'd say it's worth a conversation about continuing this relationship. Oop, I actually haven't read Little Women, but I ordered it for my Kindle. It's just so out of the blue that I wonder if there's something going on with him beyond what he said. I don't know. Bubblegum cannibal. This is really fucked up. As another fellow writer, I honestly would have broken down. That's so much work just down the drain just because you wanted to get your work completed. It's ridiculous. Honestly, if it were me, I'd have to fistfight the guy after I've stopped crying over destroyed work. Going with what 4B3 it said, definitely take his key away. There's no doghouse or, you can get this back when you earn it back about it. I've personally been in this situation where I've had my old novella notebooks used in a grill fire, and with truth, I've never accepted the apologies. The person isn't even a friend to me anymore. Not saying you should dump him or break ties with him in general, oh not at all. However, I do say there should be a conversation about the relationship here somewhere. If he can't handle you being immersed in something you've put years into, something you love, he's not ready to date any type of creator, to be quite honest. It's scary that he honestly thought that destroying anything that looked remotely important was the best thing to do in the situation. But when you regain yourself, try and retrace your steps now that he's hiding from you. Try and rebalance your world building, some new things might even come out of it. Keep your head up, friend, and hopefully you can pull back some information and crawl back from there. It'll be difficult, but you can do it. OOP. He stood there and he seemed so, I don't know. Proud, happy, vindicated. I've had my jaw dropped once before in my entire life, to the ventriloquist girl who was on America's Got Talent LOL. I didn't know it was an actual feeling of shock awe. It did last night right before I blanked out and woke up face down on my bed asking him to leave. OOP edited the post edit. Holy cuss, you guys. I am absolutely overwhelmed. I'm not even sure what to say. I asked a girlfriend if I could come over and talk, so we are getting some wine and a pizza. Update. It's been about 3 months since I made my post. This somehow seems like it got really long. The night I made my post I went to a friend's house and she ordered a pizza, we got ice cream, and a bottle of wine. She's a straight shooter, takes a neutral approach, and she gives solid relationship advice, so I felt comfortable talking to her about everything. She couldn't figure out why he'd done it. We went over how he and I hung out, how much he seemed to care about me, how we looked into each other's eyes. But it also revealed a lot of hesitation on my part. I'm a positive person and tend to forgive faults, or overlook them. I suspect it's some sort of coping method from my childhood. We had some unresolved issues I think he was holding in, but when I'd bring them up he'd just get kind of salty and go, "It's fine, I don't care anymore." But he'd bring them up in arguments. I didn't realize how toxic it was. That same night I told him I was coming over the next day to talk about things. I told him I'd be over around 11 and the only thing he texted me was okay, which I didn't respond to. I went over to his house at 11 and he was still asleep. He got upset when I woke him up. It took the wind out of my sails. On a good day I cry if something upsets me, but I was so angry and heartbroken I couldn't even think. I left without saying a word to him. He didn't follow me. On my way out I went to the kitchen and took my house key from his keyring. I drove home in a daze, collected all his things, put them in a box on my porch, and texted him to come get them. He said, "What the hell? That's fine, I'll come by later and pick them up." I went out with a few girlfriends. We got drunk and had some amazing food. It made me feel better, but when I got home and his things were gone, I was heartbroken. I never texted him. He never texted me. I got absolutely no closure, and even though people say closure is bullshit, I've had the hardest time moving on. It's been 3 months and I still cry in the shower sometimes. Even though I broke up with him, I still feel so confused and heartbroken. I never figured out why he did what he did, I likely never will, and I miss his help and companionship. I'd love to come here and say I finished my book. But I haven't written much since. I can't get into my character's head anymore. There's a feeling of loneliness and grief, and that sort of helped me create a better outline. But I can't write about my characters. The other day I went to the bookstore to study. I ended up looking at books related to time travel and found one that has thousands of positive reviews. My novel is science fiction and I've been trying to think of how to incorporate time travel. So it kind of lined up perfectly. It turns out a lot of my ideas mirror theoretical physics. It's eerie. I've never taken physics or read about it. Suddenly string theory makes sense. Cosmology makes sense. I'm blown away, and it makes me feel so weird that so much of my plot has been studied so in depth. The book has lit a fire under me. Reading more about everything makes me so excited, and it's helped me really flesh out my plot. I can't put it down and read 20 or so pages a night. I haven't actually made time to sit and read a book for years. I always have a notebook with me now, so I write my ideas down. I haven't written about my characters yet, but my passion is back. My plot is making more sense. Now I don't care much about how we broke up. I'm not confused. I sometimes get sad at night or during the day, or if I go out and make prolonged eye contact with a guy. I haven't thought about dating and I'm still too hurt to pursue it. But every day I move on a little bit more. I wanted to thank everyone who gave me advice. I forgot about my post until just now, And when I went back through the read it, it made me realize how seriously messed up it was. And it gave me closure. Thank you. TLDR. My ex-boyfriend erased my ideas for a book. I broke up with him and haven't heard from him at all, and had trouble finding closure. I had trouble writing for the last few months, but recently got that fire back in my belly. It took some time, but I found myself again. I discovered that my parents have been lying to me about my food allergies my entire life. Am I justified in cutting them out of my life? Original post. I'm using a throwaway account because I have family on Reddit. Ever since I was a little girl, my parents have told me that I am allergic to both milk and chocolate. The story goes that I broke into severe hives on my very first Halloween. My mom had given me some milk chocolate and I had to be rushed to the hospital with hives and breathing problems where I was diagnosed with both chocolate and milk allergies. Ever since then, I have never been allowed to eat anything containing chocolate or cow's milk. Over the summer, one of my college friends from out of state invited me to come stay with her for a few weeks. While I was in her state, I'd decided to use the opportunity to visit my godmother aunt who I haven't been able to see since I was a young child. My aunt was thrilled to see me and we spent a whole day hiking and just catching up. When we stopped for lunch, my aunt pulled out some granola bars, but they had chocolate in them so I couldn't eat them. I told her that I was allergic to chocolate and she was stunned. My aunt told me that I have never been allergic to chocolate and that my mom was lying to me. She told me the story of how I had gotten ill from daycare and my mom had tried to sue the daycare owner for some stupid reason that no one was sure of. My mom was pissed off because she thought the daycare owner was flirting with my dad and she wanted to get the daycare shut down. My mom then invented the story about me and the chocolate at the Halloween party. She made sure not to tell the daycare about the fake allergy and then waited for the daycare to feed me food with chocolate in it so that she could sue. When that didn't work, my mom then invented a story about me being allergic to milk. When Aunt tried to call her out on it, my mom stopped speaking to her and that silence has continued until the present. Needless to say, I was stunned. I wanted so badly to believe that my mom was telling the truth and that my aunt was lying. I waited until we got back to my aunt's house and I took a bite of one of the granola bars. And I was not allergic, at all. I was very upset and decided to call my dad. Our conversation was so crazy and out of nowhere that I don't know what else to do but type it out. The conversation went like this. Me. Dad, were you aware that I am not actually allergic to chocolate and milk like you and Mom have told me? Dad. Don't be ridiculous. You've never been able to eat chocolate without a reaction. Why would we make that up? Me. I'm not trying to accuse you of making it up. I was just asking if you were aware that I do not have the allergy. I just ate some chocolate and I didn't have any reaction to it. Did I ever get any allergy tests done? Dad. I will have to ask your mother. I am upset that you're trying to call us liars over this. Me. When did I say anyone was lying? What are you talking about? My mom then jumped into the conversation. Speakerphone? Mom. Honey, don't you remember that you had hives at your 10th birthday party? Your friend had given you a Tootsie Pop and you were allergic to the chocolate. Me. Mom, I never had a 10th birthday party and I don't know what you're talking about. I was just curious if I ever had a real allergy test done for chocolate, because I was just able to eat some without a reaction. I'm just trying to figure out if I can eat chocolate or not now. Mom. I don't know why you need to know if you had a test or not. You can't eat chocolate because we say you can't eat chocolate. You're being a little liar right now. How dare you say we never gave you a birthday party that year? You've always been ungrateful and now you can't even remember the party we gave you. Me. Mom, I know I never had a 10th birthday party because I was at summer camp. Why are you trying to make me believe that I did? My mom then started screaming at me and I just hung up the phone because it was so loud and I couldn't hear any individual words. I silenced my phone and watched as she proceeded to call me 40 times in a row. The entire time my aunt was watching in horror. My aunt then gave me a hug and told me that this is why she doesn't have a relationship with my mother. My mom has always done this, lied to people and then tried to convince them it was the truth. I am very upset about this entire situation. The conversation was simply one of the craziest things I've seen and I don't know who these people are anymore. It creeped me out and I don't think I ever want to talk to them again or else they will try to turn on me. Am I right in wanting to cut these people out of my life? TL. Mom and Dad always told me I was allergic to chocolate. I went to visit an estranged aunt in a different state and the aunt revealed my mom made it up to try to sue a daycare. I ate the food I was supposedly allergic to and was fine. I called my parents and they tried to say I was calling them liars and then tried to make up a birthday party. It was crazy and I think they're crazy and I just need to know if it's okay to cut them out of my life. Relevant comments. Flowers 4. I'm just amazed you haven't figured it out sooner. I am allergic to various nuts, and it is said that about once a year I accidentally eat one. But when I was younger my parents kept me away from eating all nuts to be safe. They had chocolate and milk banned from the house and always told my teachers and such about my allergies at the beginning of each school year. I also had to keep an EpiPen in my car starting after I got my license, just in case something bad happened. I didn't have any reason to doubt them until a few months ago when it all came crashing down. Adds about her parents. My mom and dad are two peas in a pod and they are best friends. If she's a narcissist, then I'm 100% positive he is one too. I can't afford an allergy test, but at least I know I'm not going to die from chocolate anymore. I don't think I'll be able to pretend that I forgot about the party because it was so hurtful that she tried to lie to me about it. I don't ever want to speak to her again. She doesn't even remember my birthdays and she's my mom. I'll check out the subreddit. Thanks. Update. It's been a while, but I felt the need to update because my mom purchased a one-way ticket to Crazy Town after I made my first post. To summarize what I have found out since my last post. I am not allergic to chocolate. Chocolate is amazing and I am now addicted to the chocolate waterfall at Golden Corral. I am not allergic to milk. I am mildly lactose intolerant, but I was always told it was an allergy to a protein in the milk. I can drink Lactaid with no issues. I had an allergy test done and it confirmed that I'm not allergic to anything except for pollen and some animal dander. My mother is a psycho. After I made my original post, I decided that I was going to cut contact with my parents except through email. My mom called me over 1,000 times the first week and I eventually had to get a new phone and simply stopped answering the old phone and let the battery in it die. To put this in perspective, she used to call me 2-3 times a week and this sudden increase was pure insanity. Since my mom knew where my dorm room was located on campus, I requested to be moved into one of the more private dorm buildings because I was concerned for my privacy. I didn't tell anyone except my college friends about the move and I had thought that everything would be fine. Everything was fine for a few weeks, until I got a call from one of the adjunct professors to help tutor one of the new students. My school has a master tutor list and any student can call the tutors and arrange for help for free. US tutors are paid by the school. I told the adjunct that I would meet the student in the library in a few and grabbed my books and walked over to the library. Lo and behold, the new student was my mom. My mother decided that she would enroll in classes as a student in order to contact me. When I saw her, I froze and immediately tried to leave the library, but she followed me outside and wouldn't leave me alone. I eventually managed to duck into one of the fraternity apartments and was able to lose her, but she has been basically stalking me on campus ever since. I tried to report her to the school, but the campus police told me that since she never made any threats, that there's nothing I can do. I tried reporting her to the normal police as well, but was told the same thing. My mom has not left me any voicemails, or texts or anything at all that I can use to prove what she's doing. My RA has ensured that my mom is banned from my dorm building, only upperclassmen are allowed and my mom is technically a freshman, but beyond that I'm running out of options. My mom posted on Facebook that she is signing up for the same classes as I need to complete my major next semester. She posted her schedule and we are in one of the same classes. And I don't know what else I can do to stop the crazy. She claims that she didn't do anything to hurt me and that I'm just lying about the chocolate and milk allergies. My aunt had to go out of the country for work and I feel so alone with dealing with all of this. My dad has basically ditched and moved out of my mom's house and I haven't been able to get in contact with him either. Any ideas for how to stop the crazy? TL.ER, my mom lied to me for years and told me I had several food allergies. I caught her in the lie and cut off contact. She is now enrolled in the same classes I need to complete my degree and I don't know what I can do to stop her from stalking me. Relevant comments. Replying to a downvoting comment saying to be a mean girl and take charge. I don't think she's physically or financially dangerous, the only way she can hurt me is mentally and emotionally. I've been able to play it off with my friends so far because she is living and breathing the stereotype of the crazy Asian mother. If I can get this meeting arranged, I'm going to drink a carton of chocolate milk. I'm not worried about her because she's always been this crazy. This is just the first time that her anger has been directed at me. How did the mom find OOP's schedule? She found out from the degree catalog they publish each year, the one that lists all the classes you need to graduate. She signed up for one of the 200 level classes I had left and it doesn't need any prereqs at all. She's actually really smart and she somehow managed to test out of a lot of the core classes. She'll be taking Calc 2 next semester. When told to contact the department head or professor and have her mom removed, I'm typing up an email to the department chair now and I'm waiting for a call back from the student affairs office. I've still got the phone, but the police wouldn't even look at it when I tried to tell them about her stalking me. It's an iPhone, so it saves all the records of when she tried to call me. Hi there, it's my first time posting here because I was hesitant to give my mom the narcissist label. That being said, I don't really have a better term to describe her behavior, and a ton of people pointed me to this subreddit after I posted on our relationships about my mom. To summarize, my mom and dad lied to me and told me I had allergies, chocolate and milk. I believed them for years until I met my estranged aunt and she spilled the beans and revealed the web of lies created by my mother. I decided to go no contact with my parents, and my mom snapped and enrolled at my university and was basically stalking me and enrolling in the same classes I need for next semester. I contacted the student affairs department and they arranged a meeting between myself and my mom regarding the stalking. At the meeting, the administrator heard both sides of our stories and pretty much caught my mom in another lie. My mom had her best poker face on and tried to claim that she hadn't contacted me in months. She denied that she had called me repeatedly, denied that she ever tried to get tutoring from me, denied everything she did. She tried to act like she was the victim and that I was just a mean and disrespectful daughter who hated her mom. And that's when I produced my iPhone and showed the administrator the call log from when my mom called me over 1,000 times in a row. This is not an exaggeration. The call log hit quadruple digits. My mom then tried to deny that the number was her cell number, but the administrator looked it up in the student database and it proved she was lying. My mom tried to backtrack, but the damage was done. The administrator made us both sign contracts that said that we each must not contact each other for the remainder of the school year, otherwise we would be suspended from classes. My mom was forced to change her schedule so that she would not be in the same classes as I was in. The administrator made it clear that if she tried to circumvent the contract, even if by accident, that she could have her student ID banned from entering the student center or other buildings if I was inside. They are controlled by RFID chips and we have to swipe them to enter certain buildings. After the meeting ended, I was so happy and I felt free for the first time in weeks. A few nights later, my dad called me and left a voicemail informing me that my mom tried to commit suicide with sleeping pills and that she was going to the hospital. I thought it was fake at first, so I called the hospital and they put me through to my dad, who was in the waiting room. My dad laid into me pretty hard and called me names and stuff about the whole situation and then told me that if I didn't want my mom to die, I shouldn't have made her life miserable. So that's my Thanksgiving vacation and I don't really know what to think or do right now. I'm going to go bake a pumpkin pie and try to forget about it all, but food tastes like ash in my mouth. Relevant comments C1 as. Honey, it's not your fault. Not even a little. She is a very sick person. This suicide attempt is the inevitable conclusion of a long struggle with serious mental illness. Also, while we take all threats of suicide seriously on this sub, her failure to kill herself is notable. It is not hard to kill yourself. Even pop culture offers a few methods which are surefire, and a quick Google search will quickly turn up a dozen more. The fact that she didn't look for this information, and didn't complete her suicide, suggests that this was more of an attempt to manipulate than an attempt to leave the planet. I qualify this quickly with a link to suicide hotlines should anyone be reading this who is considering suicide genuinely. It's a nasty topic to be sure, but it needed to be said. She isn't dead, and that's significant. OOP. Thanks for saying this. My mom is incredibly intelligent and resourceful, and I know that if she really wanted to die she would have been successful. She can recite stats off the top of her head, and I've heard her saying before that most successful suicides involve guns. I know for a fact that she knows what it takes for suicide, and she's smart enough to find a way to hurt herself without leaving lasting damage. She also made sure to put me down on her list of approved visitors and sign all the paperwork, so that the nurses can tell me information without violating HIPAA. She knows that I'm the type of person who would have called the hospital and then I would know all the details and she could guilt me with them. My dad wants me to apologize to his girlfriend's children for calling out their racist comments about my race. Original post. Bear with me, I'll try my very best to keep this as short as possible. My parents split when I was 23 and my sister was 20. They were such a poor match and I'm surprised they lasted so long, and both of us breathed a bit of a sigh of relief when they split. Everyone was immediately happier. And since then both of our parents have found new partners. I've always had a good relationship with my dad, albeit a bit of a strained one. My dad is a fair bit less politically correct than I am, and I'm hardly PC at all, trust me. He calls things that are stupid or that he doesn't like gay. He uses the word fag to describe gay people, thinks Hillary Clinton would be a bad president because she'd nuke everyone on her period, and laments that he can't use the N-word in public. He's the epitome of out-of-touch late 50s lily white guy, is what I'm saying. I love my dad, and while these things bother me, there's literally no changing him, so I have to just bear it when I'm hanging out with him. And an important note is that while my dad says some sexist, homophobic shit, he never does so in public. At the very least, He knows when to keep his opinions to himself and his family. Recently, my dad's been seeing this woman, let's call her Iris. Iris has 2 kids as well, 29M and 27F. I don't really know Iris very well. I met her earlier this year at my dad's place, but only very briefly as I was dropping off a few things with my dad. My sister's never met her before, and neither of us has met her kids before. My dad really likes this woman, so he wants all of us, both sets of kids, to get to know each other and the parents so we can all be a blended family. Despite my dad's political incorrectness, he can be adorable sometimes. So dad invited us all out to dinner. My sister's known to be a bit bristly with strangers, so I told her to be on her best behavior, because I want our dad to be happy and I didn't want to offend Iris or her kids. So we sit down and all start trying to get to know each other. My dad chose a Mexican restaurant to take us out to, because it's our whole family's favorite type of restaurant. My mom is Mexican, and growing up we had the most bomb-ass authentic Mexican food all the time. Since my mom and dad split, my dad has been trying to fill the hole my mom's great cooking left in his belly, so to speak, and is a taqueria junkie. Also important to note, me and my sister, despite being half Mexican, have really white skin. We have obviously Mexican features, or at least I think they're obviously Mexican, but everyone always assumes we are of white European descent because of the color of our skin. So we sit down with Iris and her kids, and immediately her kids start complaining. These are grown-ass adults complaining that half of the menu is in Spanish. Next to each thing on the menu was the Spanish name and the English name, and all the descriptions were in English, so it wasn't like an English speaker couldn't read it. I am near fluent in Spanish, and my sister speaks passably, and we're both in school to become English second language teachers, but we tried to settle the hair on the backs of our necks and ignore them. We actually managed to have a pleasant convo with them otherwise, until the waiter comes over to get our drink orders. Iris's son snapped at the waiter like a dog to get his attention and take his order first, and her daughter spoke in a highly condescending voice, very slowly, like this man working at a restaurant that caters to big fat white people couldn't understand damn English. Iris was normal, thank God, but when the waiter, bless his jolly soul, he was so kind despite being treated like an idiot by those two, left, her son remarked that he didn't expect the service to be very good. I don't even know if he could understand us. My dad has been to this place before, so he said, no, the service here is great, you're going to love this food, I recommend. I can't remember what exactly he recommended. Trying to smooth things over, and then the son says, not like I could understand him either with that god-awful accent. These people need to learn English if they want to come to America. Probably illegal or some shit. Me and my sister are generally nice, kind people, but no one has ever accused us of being patient or suffering fools silently. So because we're petty, we just gave each other a look and started speaking only in Spanish to one another for the rest of the night. I felt bad, because Iris looked mortified, but it felt so good to be so petty for the next hour or so through dinner. We of course switched to English to talk to Iris or her kids, but with each other and my dad, who can understand it but not speak it, we spoke the most rapid fluent Spanish we could muster. And at every opportunity my sister would try to mention that we were Mexicans and had grown up in a Hispanic household with our mom and her extended family. Since then, my dad's been texting and calling us. Mostly me because I'm usually the ringleader of these sorts of things, begging for us to apologize to Iris's kids for embarrassing them. I'm sure my dad didn't know they were going to be so racist towards Mexicans, or else I'm sure he wouldn't have invited them to go out for Mexican food, but I know he doesn't even think what they said was that racist. He's said that they could have been worse, and there was no need for you to humiliate them and Iris like that. I agree, Iris was lovely. I should have taken her feelings into account, and I have no problem calling or meeting her to apologize for acting so petty and childish, but damn it, I do not want to apologize to racists for pointing out and not taking their racism sitting down. Is that so wrong? What should I do? Am I just being petty about this too? I don't want to make my dad unhappy, but I know he's not a good judge of what is and isn't racism. And I don't feel like I should apologize for slapping a couple of racist adult brats down. TLDR, Dad's new girlfriend's kids were racist against Mexicans, didn't know sister and I are half Mexican. Sister and I spoke nothing but Spanish to each other for the night to embarrass them. Dad now wants us, me, to apologize to them for embarrassing them. What do you do? Top comments. Brown is not freed. Ha ha ha, nice and don't apologize. Deleted. He's said that they could have been worse. Yeah, well, so could you. They're lucky you went with the indirect reminder that they have no idea who might be listening to or offended by their bigotry, rather than calling them out for everyone in the restaurant to hear. Tell Dad and Iris that you realize her children's ignorance doesn't reflect on her, but they should feel embarrassed over what they did, And you think it's best to avoid future family dinners until they understand where they went wrong and apologize to you. Deleted. Apologize. In Spanish. Update. So I thought I'd come back to update y'all. My sister and I talked about it with our mom, who has always been much calmer than us. She laughed at us speaking nothing but Spanish, and said she wished she'd been there to see Iris's kids' faces. She did tell us to just apologize though, because she knows how our dad can hold grudges over tiny things like this. We didn't really want to do that though. So I contacted Iris and asked if she and I could meet up for coffee and talk about everything that happened. She was super apologetic when we met for coffee and said a lot of her kids' funny ideas come from their bio dad, who is a patriotic Republican. The way she kind of sugar-coated everything about it makes me think maybe she doesn't necessarily think what they did was wrong in general, just that she was sorry my sister and I happened to be part Mexican and that what they did offended us. Anyway, it was just me and Iris at a Starbucks. My sister wasn't there. She's grown incredibly apathetic to the incident in a very short amount of time. That's just the way she is. And I said I understand everyone's entitled to their opinion, that my dad has some opinions I don't agree with at all too, but that it was rude of them to assume we'd be okay being subjected to their racist remarks and was embarrassing to be seen with racists. Iris was pretty flustered at the term racists, but I didn't back down. Anyway, she was at least reasonable, and apologized again about what happened, and I apologized that we embarrassed her at dinner. And besides some slightly irreversibly ruffled feathers, I think I've at least smoothed things over with her. My dad is another story. He is stubbornly not talking to me until I apologize to his girlfriend's kids. I made my stance clear, that I wouldn't, and if he wanted to act like racism against his kids was okay, then I wouldn't be hanging around him anymore. Or God forbid bringing my future mixed kids and his future grandkids around. My sister just sent him a text that said, "Have fun with the racists." She's not good at subtlety. Anyway, that's where things are right now. Not a super good ending, but not necessarily a bad ending either. TLDR. Iris apologized for her racist kids without really acknowledging their racism, Dad being a stubborn fool. My stepfather's temptation could destroy everything, and my mom has no idea what's happening between us. Have you ever kept a secret that may destroy everything because it was so risky and enticing? That was my existence, and the secret I kept was as illegal as the subsequent sinister cravings. This is my story, and my name is Isabel. Something inside of me changed the night following my 18th birthday, and now that I'm 19, it all began. This is not what I asked for. Victor wasn't someone I asked for. But here I am, speaking the truth to you. I need to get it off my chest, even if I'm not proud of it. My stepfather, Victor, was no ordinary man. With just a glance, he was able to command the room and exert a silent authority over others. I knew there was something sinister about him from the time he married my mother. However, I believed that danger was not intended for me. Like a breeze that gradually develops into a storm, it started off so innocently. I have a clear memory of that evening. The house was silent and it was late. The only sounds were the waves breaking outside, as though the sea was aware of the mayhem that was developing inside of me. My mother didn't realize the tension was rising below. She was sleeping upstairs. When I arrived downstairs, Victor was seated at the kitchen table, wearing a flimsy robe that hardly fit me. I convinced myself that I wasn't attempting to impress him. However, the slow, methodical manner his eyes followed me gave the impression that he saw me in a way that no one else had. At first, he merely watched without saying anything. Even though it was unsettling. I couldn't help myself. His eyes were heavy and seductive, and something dark and terrible sprang up inside of me at that very moment. As though the room itself could sense the change in our dynamic, the air between us was heavy and nearly oppressive. Then he said, "You're up late," in a low, nearly growling voice. As if daring me to step beyond an unseen line from which none of us could return, his words lingered in the air like a challenge. I said, "I couldn't sleep," as my heart began to race. My feet remained set despite knowing I should leave, defying the logic that was screaming in my head. He grinned, but it was a smile that aroused something deep inside me rather than reaching his eyes. "Spend some time sitting with me, keep me company." I paused, but only briefly. The table felt like a thin wall separating two worlds, one familiar and comfortable, the other unfamiliar and perilous, and before I realized it, I was seated across from him. His fingers brushed mine as his hand went over the table. Even though the touch was fleeting, it made me quiver. It was plenty to make me gasp for air and to get me to doubt every single barrier I believed I had. He said, "I've been watching you," in a softer, more personal tone. I didn't pull away as his fingers lingered for a second longer than they should have. "You're not a little girl anymore, Isabel." My chest was thumping with my heart. I ought to have said something, Anything at all, but I was stuck in this weird perverse moment. His words and the way he gazed at me conveyed a sense of both fear and excitement, as if I were more than simply his stepdaughter and no longer invisible. I was afraid because I was something more. The tension-filled stillness that lingered between us was a result of unsaid wishes seething beneath the surface. My thinking begged me to flee and to put an end to whatever it was before it got out of control. However, my body ignored me. Despite my knowledge that it was improper, I felt a strong attraction to him. "Does it scare you?" As if he could read the struggle brewing within me, he inquired in a voice so silky it was practically a whisper. "The way I look at you?" I tightened my throat and swallowed hard. I was unable to respond. Rather, I found myself standing and moving toward him around the table as though I were unable to escape some unseen force. As I got closer, his body tensed and his eyes darkened. The heat of his presence and the way the air between us seemed to vibrate with expectation caused me to stop a few inches from him. I felt a shock of electricity as his hand extended and brushed across my arm's sensitive flesh. My body betrayed me once more, and I let out a quiet gasp. Even when I muttered, "You know this can't happen," I didn't believe myself. A different story was revealed by the way I shuddered under his touch. He whispered, "And yet here you are," as his hand moved up my arm and settled on my shoulder. I felt my body lean into his touch as his thumb touched the side of my neck, seeking it in a manner I couldn't quite put my finger on. I tried to ignore the guilt that was eating at me by closing my eyes, but it didn't help. I had gone too far. My heart was pounding, my breathing was shallow, and I could feel his hot, seductive breath on my skin. I wanted to halt. I had to quit. However, I was unable to. With his lips so close to mine that I could just taste the forbidden, he said, "What do you want, Isabel?" I opened my eyes and looked him in the eye. The same yearning that boiled within me was seen in his eyes. But before I could respond, the moment was cut short by the sound of footsteps coming from upstairs. Mom was up. I took a step back, the reality of what nearly happened rushing down around me, my heart thumping in my chest. Victor flashed a sly smile, as though he had just won a devious game. He got up and brushed by me, his hand caressing my waist as he went. "We should talk again sometime," he muttered. The moment was over in an instant. However, the fire he had kindled within me was unquenchable. "And you, how would you respond if I were you? Would you walk away or give in to temptation? Tell us what you think in the comments section below. I need to understand that I'm not alone in feeling torn between good and wrong." I couldn't get that night out of my head. I wasn't sure I could resist the way Victor's breath brushed across my lips and the way his touch shot sparks through my skin. The power he had over me, a subtle unsaid authority that both scared and made me feel alive, was more than simply the physical. And we started playing the game seriously after that evening. Days went by, and on the surface, everything appeared to be as usual. My mother was blissfully oblivious, as though she was unaffected by the tension in the air. However, every look, every word and every moment we shared became electrified between Victor and me. It was approaching something that neither of us could stop, like a slow-burning fuse. I made an effort to stay away from him, telling myself that it was the proper course of action. I spent more time in my room, concentrated on my coursework, or went to the beach to get some fresh air and let the sound of the waves soothe my mind. But the memory of his touch followed me everywhere like an unseen hand. Things got out of hand on a Saturday afternoon. Victor and I were left alone while my mother left for some errands in town. I had promised myself that I would remain in my room, stay away from him, and maintain my normalcy. However, as the hours passed, the house's silence tormented me, and the more I considered it, the more I found myself straying downstairs, attracted to the peril like a moth to a flame. He was reading a newspaper in the living room as if nothing had ever transpired between us. However, I could sense him. Every part of me knew about him. I remained there with my heart pounding, not sure if I should approach him or head back upstairs. But my body had already decided and was moving in closer. He continued, "I see you've come out of hiding," in a calm voice that had a tinge that made my heart race. I could tell he felt me even though his gaze remained fixed on the newspaper. "Is this the way things will be going forward, Isabel?" "Me chasing, you running?" I tried to say, "I'm not running," but my voice deceived me. We were both aware that I was lying. "Really?" Now, his tone was playful, as though he were challenging me to tell the truth. When he eventually lowered the newspaper and met my gaze, the magnetic force between us returned with greater vigor than before. "Because it seems like that's exactly what you've been doing." I started to reply, but the words became stuck in my throat. Rather, I simply stood there and gazed at him, feeling the gravity of the situation increase. My mind cried out for me to get out, to return upstairs, and to stop this risky game before it continued. However, my body had other ideas. With his gaze fixed on mine, Victor reclined in his chair. He whispered, "Come here." But it wasn't a request. It was a command, and I felt a shock of energy. After a brief moment of hesitation, I moved forward. I was unable to stop myself. I was unwilling to stop. As I walked toward him, my heart thumping louder with every step, the space felt too small and too hot. When I got close enough, he extended his hand and ran it up my arm, causing my skin to tingle from the heat of his touch. Breathless, I waited there, anticipating the next move. After that, he carefully and slowly drew me onto his lap. The way his hand slid over me and the feel of his body beneath mine was seductive, even though I knew it was wrong. My entire body was ablaze, with every nerve begging for more. Even so, a tiny voice in the back of my mind kept reminding me of the repercussions and that my mother was only a few miles away and was totally unaware of the treachery taking place right in front of her. "What are we doing?" I didn't know if I wanted an answer, so I whispered. Victor's lips touched my ear as his hands closed tighter around my waist. His breath was hot against my skin as he whispered, "Exactly what you want." His fingers moved slowly in circles around my exposed skin as they slid under the hem of my shirt, giving me chills with every touch. My body betrayed me once more as I leaned toward him when I should have stopped him and backed away. I felt my breath catch as his hands rose higher and his fingertips touched the curvature of my waist. The distinction between right and wrong became hazy, and my only thought was how wonderful it felt to be wanted and caressed in this way. I began to say, "We can't." But my words were halting and unconvincing. Already I was leaning into him, wanting and needing more. He pressed his lips to my neck and said, "We already are," which caused my veins to boil up. My body shook with anticipation as I let out a faint gasp as his fingers crept lower, hinting at the border of the forbidden. But before anything further could happen, there was a knock on the door. The moment broke as we both froze. Panic was coursing through my veins as my heart raced. My mom couldn't have returned by now, could she? With a dark, menacing flicker in his eyes, Victor's hand slipped away from me. "Go," he urged softly. His tone calm yet forceful, as though nothing unusual had just occurred. "Upstairs. Now." I refrained from arguing. With my legs shaking, I leaped from his lap and rushed back to my room, my thoughts racing. With my heart racing and the realization of what nearly transpired weighing heavily on me, I closed the door behind me. I tried to quiet the roaring tempest of emotions inside of me by pressing my back against the door and breathing heavily. There was still heat between us, simmering beneath the surface, waiting to burst at the next chance. How would you have responded? Remaining or walking away? I don't even know what I'm doing anymore, so please let me know in the comments. Even though I made an effort to suppress it, the guilt kept eating away at me. I kept thinking about Victor's hands on me and the fire between us whenever I was by myself. As if he knew precisely how to pull me apart, I would close my eyes and feel his breath on my neck and the way his fingers had moved over my flesh. I felt alive, even powerful, but that strength had a cost, and I wasn't prepared to pay it. My mother had no suspicions. Unaware of the chaos simmering beneath the surface, she continued to live her days with the same radiant smile. I saw that I was avoiding her more and more and stayed away from her whenever I could. I didn't want her to ask me questions I couldn't answer or see the shame in my eyes. I was too terrified to witness the extent of the harm that would be caused when the truth ultimately exploded because it was a ticking time bomb. The situation worsened once more on a Sunday afternoon. Victor and I were alone again since my mom had gone to see a friend across town. Since that day in the living room, the air between us had become more dense. Every interaction was a game we were both playing and neither of us had the guts to stop, a quiet challenge. I pretended to read while I sat on the back porch, but my gaze kept going to the open door behind me. I could feel him, the weight of his presence raising the hair on the back of my neck, and I knew he was inside. With him so near, I was unable to concentrate as my fingers fumbled with the pages. I knew it was him before I even turned when the door cracked open. He went outside, moving slowly and deliberately, as though he wanted me to have time to respond. With every stride he took toward me, my pulse quickened and my heart raced. "Isabel," he said in a quiet, nearly whispery voice, as though we were exchanging secrets. We were, in a sense. I swallowed hard and put the book down without giving him a glance. I was unable to. I knew I wouldn't be able to control myself if I did. He said, "We need to talk," as he approached and cast his shadow over me. Instead of taking a seat, he simply stood there, looming over me like some evil entity against which I was powerless. I managed to say, "I don't think that's a good idea," though my voice was a little shaky. He knelt next to me, So close I could feel the heat emanating from his body. You know we can't pretend this didn't happen. My breath caught in my throat as I finally turned to face him. Something I couldn't identify but sensed deep within me was visible in his black eyes. It was more than just desire. It was dangerous. It was the excitement of knowing that we were tinkering with fire and that we dared to allow it to devour us. I said, I'm not pretending. But I knew it was a lie as soon as I said it. Victor's fingertips touched my skin in a way that made me shiver as he reached out and brushed a lock of hair away from my face. Don't you sense it? This is between us. It won't go away. I ought to have gotten up, left and put an end to this before things got out of hand. However, I remained motionless, my body deceiving me once more. His presence was overwhelming, and his touch was electric. Even though I knew I would get burned, I couldn't help but be pulled to him like a moth to a flame. Victor! My voice trembled with a mixture of excitement and dread, barely audible. His breath was hot against my ear as he leaned closer. He muttered, "Tell me to stop," as his lips touched my flesh. Tell me you don't want this. I ought to have said it. I ought to have told him to stop and go away. However, I didn't. I was unable to. As an alternative, I turned to face him, our lips almost touching. The tension between us was heavy and intolerable, and my heart was thumping in my chest. The words, "I can't," escaped my lips before I could stop them. I was pulled to my feet by Victor's hand as it moved down my arm and wrapped around my wrist. He held on tight. Standing so close that our bodies nearly touched, he held me there. As the attraction between us took hold, the outside world appeared to fade into the background. He said, "You don't want me to stop," in a confident tone, as though he knew me better than I did. "You've been considering it. It's visible in your eyes." My breath came in short spurts as I bit my lip. I detested his accuracy and ability to read me. I thought about him, what we could do and what we had already done whenever we were alone. The urge was stronger than anything I had ever experienced, yet the guilt was still present. I was drawn closer when Victor's hand moved to my waist. His body was pushed against mine, and I could feel the searing heat between us. He teased, taunted, and dared me to give in as his lips lingered over mine. My body desired this, but my head and heart were screaming for me to leave. "This is what I wanted." He whispered, "Tell me what you want, Isabel." His lips grazing mine, just barely touching. I was unable to talk. My mind was racing with contradictory feelings and my throat felt constricted. I had no choice but to lean into him, close my eyes, and wait for the inevitable to come. However, a car pulled into the driveway before our lips could touch. The truth of what we were going to do hit me like a tidal wave, and I jerked away as my eyes snapped open. My mom was at home. Victor took a step back, his expression unreadable. The fire between us remained, simmering just below the surface, waiting for the next opportunity to explode, even though the time was past. If you were in my position, how would you respond? Would you turn away or allow yourself to sink further? Tell me in the comments below. I must understand that I am not alone in this problem. Long after the moment was over, I could still feel the heat of his touch. The tension between us was intensifying and taking over every silent moment, every look and every word spoken in private. In an exciting and terrifying way, Victor had a way of making me feel needed and seen. And suddenly the distinction between good and wrong became increasingly hazy with every day that went by. Everything changed that night. Victor and I were alone once more after my mother left for the evening. I made an effort to persuade myself that everything would be all right and that I could live with him in the same home without developing the same risky habits. However, I felt in my heart that I was deceiving myself. I heard him behind me as I was idly tidying up in the kitchen after supper. I felt that familiar thrill of eagerness when I heard his footsteps. I knew it was him without even turning around. Unspoken anxiety thickened the air as it shifted. Victor said, "You're quiet tonight," in his usual smooth and low voice. He drew nearer until I could feel his body heat behind me. As I dried a plate, my hand shaking, I lied and said, "I'm just tired." Naturally, he didn't believe me. His eyes were on me, waiting, watching. He was always able to tell when I was lying and when I was attempting to hide. However, it never succeeded. Even when I tried to pull away, Victor had a way of drawing me back in. "You've been avoiding me," he murmured quietly, with a hint of wicked humor in his voice. "Why?" I took a deep breath and tried to concentrate on the task at hand. I murmured, "I haven't." But even I thought the words sounded weak. He whispered, "Isabel." And I felt a chill go through me when I heard my name. I could feel his breath on my neck now that he was so near. "Observe me." I paused, holding the towel in my hands tighter. My body was deceiving me once more, pulling me toward him despite my knowledge that it was wrong, despite my mind's cries for me to move away and put as much distance between us as possible. I turned to him slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. I could see that same need, that same deadly intensity that prevented me from thinking clearly, when his dark eyes met mine. I was caught when he moved closer and pressed me up against the counter. The intense yearning that had been growing between us for weeks was trapped between him and me. He stated in a deep, confident voice, "You can't keep running from this. You sense it. I am certain that you do." He reached out and gently but purposefully brushed his fingertips on my cheek, causing my breath to catch in my throat. I felt the heat rising in my body and my pulse speeding as the touch gave me a shock of electricity. I said, we can't. But even I found the words to be weak and unconvincing. "And yet," he whispered, drawing me in closer as his hand moved down to rest on my waist. "We're here." I ought to have shoved him aside. I ought to have urged him to cease. However, I didn't. Rather, my body betrayed every logical notion I had, and I stood there. I felt the air between us get thicker and heavier as his hand crept lower, following the curvature of my waist, as though the room itself knew we were about to do something we couldn't undo. With guilt still gnawing at me, I muttered, "I don't want to hurt her." Yet my body still leaned toward his touch, yearning for it. Victor's voice was a sensual whisper as his lips touched my ear. "She is not involved in this. This concerns us." I felt the tightness coil inside of me tighten as I closed my eyes. His hands were all over me, soft yet firm, and I could feel myself slipping, sinking more into the pit we had made. Like a fire that threatened to devour all in its path, the heat between us was intolerable. With his lips grazing the side of my neck, he muttered, "Tell me to stop," sending chills down my spine. "Tell me you're not interested in this." However, I was unable to. My hands went to his chest, and as I felt the hard planes of his body against mine, I pushed him closer rather than pushing him away. My senses were overwhelmed by the warm, musky, delicious scent of him, which impairs judgment and prevents me from thinking about anything but him. "I can't," I said in a tremulous but honest voice. "I am unable to stop." All he needed was that. It was as though the world vanished when his lips struck mine. Only we were there, and the heat was all-consuming and oppressive, threatening to suffocate us both. As our bodies crushed together, the tension between us finally broke as his hands tangled in my hair and drew me in closer. I could feel his breath catch. The illicit yearning that had been bubbling beneath the surface for so long had us engrossed in one another. His touch was all over me, burning my skin and causing pain I didn't know was conceivable. And I was unable to stop. I had no desire to. But then everything fell apart as fast as it had started. We both snapped out of the moment as we heard a creak of floorboards coming from the hallway. Our bodies remained squeezed together as we froze, breathing raggedly. Panic swept through me as my heart thumped in my chest. Were we spotted? Was there anyone who heard? There was a flash of something there. Something dangerous. But Victor was the first to pull away, his eyes dark and unreadable. The tension in the air was still heavy and oppressive, yet he straightened and smoothed his shirt as though nothing had happened. He said in a promising whisper, "We'll finish this later," and turned to leave me standing there, gasping for air and feeling as though the weight of what we had just done was bearing down on me. If you were in my shoes, how would you respond? Would you have allowed yourself to fall further, or could you have prevented it? I need to know that I'm not the only one having this problem, so please let me know in the comments. The ensuing days were a haze of yearning and shame. My intellect begged me to stop, but every time I saw Victor, my body tensed with anticipation. But after what had transpired in the kitchen, halting was no longer an option. I was too lost, too enmeshed in a web of passion and feelings that I was unable to break free from. The tension was intense every time we passed each other in the house, even though I hadn't talked to Victor since that night. Thick and oppressive, it hovered between us, a continual reminder of what we had accomplished, and what we still needed to do. My mother was too preoccupied with her own world to realize what was going on right in front of her. The situation changed on a Friday night. Victor and I were once again alone after my mother traveled for the weekend to see some relatives. I should have gone to a friend's house or found a reason to leave, but I chose to stay even though I knew it was risky. I felt compelled to stay and watch where this perverse game would lead us. There was a knock on the door while I was in my room. Knowing who it was before I even opened it made my heart skip a beat. He was standing there when I did, leaning nonchalantly against the doorframe and staring at me with his black eyes. This time, there was no need for small talk or pretense. We both understood his purpose. "Can I come in?" Victor spoke in a low, velvety voice that melted into my skin. I ought to have declined. My pulse was pounding as I shut the door behind him, But instead of closing it and ending it there, I moved aside to let him in. The weight of all we had left unsaid hung in the air between us, making it electrifying. Victor was in the center of the room, his presence strong and overwhelming. With each second that went by, I felt the attraction between us growing stronger than before. "You've been avoiding me," he stated in a composed yet determined tone. Like he was already formulating his next move, his gaze wandered over me, resting on my lips and neck. "I had to," I said, saying hardly louder than a whisper. "I didn't know how to face you after." He interrupted me as he moved in closer, his fingers cupping my chin. My legs went weak as his thumb brushed across my bottom lip in a forceful yet tender manner. His breath was hot against my skin as he muttered, "You don't have to be afraid. This is between us, no one else." With his hands on me and him so near, I tried to slow my breathing by closing my eyes, but it was impossible. Every word and every touch was like fuel for an uncontrollable inferno. I said, "Victor, we can't keep doing this?" But I didn't believe what I was saying. I was already leaning into him, wanting his warmth and touch. He didn't say anything in response. Rather, his hand moved to my waist and drew me to him. His lips touched my ear and I could feel his heartbeat, steady and powerful. With a low growl that chilled my spine, he whispered, "Tell me you don't want this." But I was unable to express it. Nor with my body reacting to him already. Nor with his hands on me. I put my hands on his chest and rather than pushing him away, I drew him in, needing him as much as I needed air. The world seemed to collapse when Victor's lips struck mine. As his hands moved over my body, burning my skin, there was only the heat between us and nothing else. I couldn't get enough of his claiming, possessive touch. I needed and desired more. With our bodies entangled in a tangle of limbs and longing, we staggered back toward the bed. He was touching every part of me, including my neck, waist and hips, as if he was attempting to commit every detail to memory. In the way he made me feel and the way he made everything else vanish, I was engrossed in it. However, the sound of a phone ringing broke the moment just when the tension was at its highest. Both of us froze, our bodies still pushed together, our breaths labored. My phone buzzed with an incoming call while it was resting on the nightstand. I felt sick to my stomach as I looked at the screen. My mom was the one. As though challenging me to respond, Victor's dark, menacing gaze locked with mine. "Don't," he said in a low, authoritative whisper. As his hand moved up my thigh, I was reminded of the heat that still burned between us and the situation we were in. However, I was unable to ignore the call. With my heart thumping in my chest, I gently pulled him aside and reached for the phone. "It's my mom," I responded, my voice wavering. In an attempt to calm my breathing, I put the phone to my ear but my heart continued to race. I tried to sound natural when I said, "Hey Mom," but my voice sounded breathless. "Is everything okay?" My mother's worried voice said, "Sweetheart, you sound off," over the phone. I looked at Victor, who was grinning at me, that sinister, perilous yearning still shining in his eyes. I tried to gather myself, but my heart was pounding. I lied and said, "Yeah, everything's fine. Just tired, I guess." "Well, I wanted to give you an update. I will return on Sunday night. Please look for yourself." "I will," I said, putting the phone down as fast as I could. Victor was on me once more as soon as the connection finished, his lips grazing my neck and his hands moving up my sides. "Now where were we?" His voice was full of hope as he whispered. However, something had changed within me. The truth of what we were doing struck me like a wave, despite how much I wanted him and how much my body yearned for his touch. The guilt was unbearable, and my mother was out there, totally oblivious to the treachery taking place behind her back. "Victor, stop," I said in a tremulous voice as I pushed him away. He stared at me and hesitated, his eyes narrowing as though he was trying to determine whether I was serious. "I can't do this," I replied, hardly raising my voice above a whisper. "Not like this." With his eyes black with annoyance and his jaw clenched, Victor took a step back. "You can't keep running from this," he continued in a menacingly low voice. "You know you want this as much as I do." However, I stepped back and shook my head, my heart thumping in my chest. "I need time." He looked at me for a long time, and I briefly believed he was trying to press the matter. Then, with a low growl of annoyance, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving me standing there, gasping for air and feeling shaky from the pressure of what we had nearly done. For the following few days, I tried to tell myself that I had made the correct choice and that I had to push Victor away. However, what is the reality? In all honesty, I was barely able to keep my composure. I could still feel his hands on me and hear his deep, authoritative voice telling me not to run every time I closed my eyes. I had no desire to flee, not from him. However, the weight of our actions and the remorse were too great. But I couldn't get him out of my head. He seemed to have taken up residence in every part of me, including my body and mind. I could feel him haunting me even when we weren't together, drawing me back into that dangerous dark world where we were the only ones who cared. And I knew I couldn't avoid it no matter how hard I tried. On a Thursday night, everything went wrong. I was alone, trying to concentrate on anything other than Victor as my mom was expected to be home late from work. However, it was useless since he had entered my thoughts and the urge would not go, no matter how hard I tried to stop it. The entrance door creaked open as I was in the living room. A beat skipped in my chest. Even before I saw him, I knew it was him, that this was the moment I had been trying to avoid but was unable to do so. As he entered the room, the air changed, heavy with unsaid tension, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. Victor's eyes immediately met mine. They were intense and black, filled with the same need that had drawn me in. He didn't have to say anything. I could tell everything I needed to know by the way he looked at me. The match was over. The point of no return had been reached. At last, he whispered in a low, menacing voice, "I can't stop thinking about you." His eyes never left mine as he stepped closer. "I think about you and nothing else, Isabel." My heart was thumping in my chest, and my pulse was getting faster. I wanted to push him away once more, but I couldn't find the right words. I was immobilized and unable to breathe as I stood there, trapped in his gravity. In 2 steps, Victor drew closer to me, pulling my face up to meet his eyes as his palm cupped my chin. Heat sparks raced through my body as a result of his electric touch. I shook, torn between wanting to go and wanting him to draw me closer. I shivered as he said, "I tried to stay away but I can't." His thumb grazing my bottom lip. "I'd prefer not to." His words gave me a sudden surge of need that made it impossible for me to fight or think about what I knew was coming. I was already leaning into him, wanting to feel his lips against mine and his warm skin. I desired him. I asked him. I said, "I can't do this," but I knew it was a lie even as I said it. I knew I was too far gone to stop now based on the way my body reacted to him and how my pulse raced whenever he came close. With his lips grazing my ear and his voice dark and full of promise, he said, "Yes, you can. This is what you desire. You desire me." His hand moved down to my waist and pulled me against him, causing me to moan quietly. He pushed me closer, his breath hot against my neck, and the heat between us was terrible, burning every nerve in my body. He snarled, his lips moving down my throat and chilling me as he said, "Tell me you don't want this. I will stop if you tell me to." However, I was unable to. My hands went to his chest, and as my fingers tangled in his shirt, I drew him closer rather than pushing him away. He held me tightly, as if he never wanted to let go, and I could feel the strength in his arms and the hard planes of his body beneath my hands. "Victor?" With the weight of what we were going to accomplish, my voice was wavering and hardly more than a whisper. I was engrossed when his lips met mine, hot and demanding. The fire that had been raging between us for so long could not be extinguished. His hands were all over the place, claiming, investigating and erasing everything but the feelings he gave me. I couldn't get enough of his hot, desire-filled kiss and possessive touch. Tangled in one another, we staggered back till we struck the couch. With his hands on my waist, Victor drew me down onto his lap and gave me a passionate, intense kiss, as if he was scared I might vanish if he released his hold. I didn't vanish. I completely caved. I was unable to think clearly or concentrate on anything but him as his hands ran over my body. His lips on mine, his breath heated against my skin, and his hands made me forget about everything else. Nothing else mattered to me because I was engrossed in him and the way he made me feel alive. However, something broke just as the tension was about to explode. I froze in place as I heard a car door slam outside. With panic coursing through my veins, my heart halted. Mom. She arrived home early. As we both recognized what was happening, Victor stiffened beneath me and tightened his hold on my waist. As the sound of footsteps neared the front door, I clambered off his lap, my heart pounding. "We must stop," I muttered, my voice shaking with sorrow and terror. "She is unable to know." Victor stood straightening his clothes, his jaw clenched, his eyes black and unreadable. Even though the sound of the front door opening sent a shockwave through us, he remarked softly and confidently, "This isn't over." Before I could gather my breath, my mother entered the room and her upbeat voice filled the air. I tried to act normal, as though nothing was wrong, and I forced a grin despite my beating heart. But I realized Victor was correct as we looked at each other across the room. There was still a long way to go. If you were in my position, how would you respond? Would the truth destroy everything, or could you keep the secret? "I need to know I'm not alone in this," so please share your thoughts in the comments section. I felt suffocated by the secret. It weighed heavily on my chest every morning when I woke up, and I knew that it would all fall apart eventually when I went to bed each night. Even though Victor hadn't shoved me since that evening in the living room, I could tell it wasn't finished by the way he looked at me and the implicit promises that burned in his eyes. It would never end. My mother was unaware, fully engrossed in her daily routine, living her life as if nothing were amiss. But it was all wrong. I was mistaken. Victor and I were tense, like a quiet storm simmering beneath the surface, waiting for the right opportunity to blow up. Things ultimately reached a breaking point on a Friday evening. I was alone with him when my mom left again. The home was too quiet, and as soon as the door behind her closed, I could feel the air getting thicker. I made an effort to divert my attention and appear as though nothing would happen, but my body knew better. I was unable to resist the pull toward him since it was stronger than before. I heard him coming while I was in the kitchen, idly doing the dishes. His steps were deliberate and slow, and my heart thumped harder in my chest with each one. I didn't need to turn around, so I didn't. I was aware that he was waiting and observing me. His voice sent chills down my spine as he whispered, "Isabel." Like a storm approaching, his presence became overwhelming as he drew nearer. I didn't answer. I was unable to trust myself or my voice. Rather, I held onto the sink's edge, my knuckles whitened as I struggled against the surge of need that swept over me. However, it was pointless. I could do nothing to stop him. I could feel the heat radiating off Victor's body as he moved closer until he was directly behind me. An electric shock went through me as his hand lightly and playful touched my arm. I bit my lip and closed my eyes to avoid making a sound, but my body was already turning against me and embracing his touch. He pressed his lips to my ear and said, "You can't keep avoiding this. You can't continue to avoid me." The sensation of his breath against my skin made me tremble, and every syllable made my heart race. His fingertips traced languid circles across my bare flesh as his hand traveled to my waist and slid under the hem of my shirt. As I fought to maintain my grounding and maintain some kind of control, my breath caught and my hold on the sink tightened, but it was slipping, quickly. Even though my voice was weak and wobbly, I managed to mumble, "I'm not avoiding you." With a quiet laugh, Victor gripped my waist tightly and drew me back to him. I was unable to focus on anything else because I could feel his strong body and his heat radiating into me. He said, "You're lying," as his lips touched the side of my neck, making me feel hot. "However, it's all right. I am aware of your desires." The fire that had been smoldering between us for so long was ignited by his words, which were like a match striking something deep inside of me. I was unable to resist it any longer. I had no desire to. The tension between us crackled like a live wire as I turned in his arms and met his eyes. As he looked down at me with a deep and intense gaze, his hands moved up to cup my face, his thumbs grazing my cheeks. "I want you," he whispered in a low, desperate voice. "I've desired you forever." Every part of me shook with anticipation as I peered up at him, my breath coming in short spurts and my heart thumping in my chest. The want that was running through me was too intense and overwhelming, even though I knew I should go and stop this before it got out of hand. I slipped the confession out of my mouth before I could stop it, whispering, "I want you too." It only required that. I was lost when Victor's lips smashed into mine. The kiss was intense, demanding, and filled with the long-suppressed yearning we had been suppressing. His hands moved over my body, drawing me in and squeezing me into him as if he and I could not get enough. I desired him. I asked him. Tangled in one another, we staggered back and collided with the kitchen counter. With his hands on my hips and his tongue caressing mine, Victor hoisted me onto it and sent waves of ecstasy through me as he kissed me. Eager for more, eager for anything, I put my legs around him and drew him in. I gasped as the cool air touched my skin as his hand moved beneath my shirt and lifted it over my head. But it was short-lived. Once more, his lips were on me, moving across my collarbone and down my neck, making me shudder every time. I held him to me with my fingers entangled in his hair because I needed to feel him, the warmth of his mouth against my flesh. His voice was hoarse with need as he whispered against my skin, "I've been waiting so long for this. So long." I was unable to talk. My body was shaking with anticipation as his hands felt every inch of me and I was breathing in short breaths. In the fire that was devouring us both, I was drowning in him and the way he made me feel. However, the front door banged as we were ready to cross the last line. My mother was at home. The sound of footsteps reverberated along the corridor, and we both stopped, our hearts thumping simultaneously. As I scurried down the counter and put my shirt back on, my mind racing and my heart racing, I was breathing in sharp breaths. As Victor fixed his clothes, his chest rose and fell with slow, deliberate breaths, his jaw was taut, and his eyes were dark with frustration. With a quiet, hopeful voice he muttered, "This isn't over." Before I could even nod, my mother entered the kitchen, greeting us with bright, unblinking eyes, utterly ignorant to the recent storm. But I realized Victor was correct as we looked at each other across the room. There was still a long way to go. If you were in my position, how would you respond? Would everything fall apart, or would you be able to keep the secret? I need to know I'm not alone in this, so please share your thoughts in the comments section below. My half-sister lied, saying I was a call girl and drug dealer, and I got kicked out. Years later, my dad's message on my wedding reopened old wounds. I'm Emma, and I would have laughed a year ago if you had told me that my own family would abandon me. However, that is precisely what took place, and it all began with Leah, my half-sister. Leah has always been dramatic, but I never thought one of her falsehoods would ruin my life. She had to be the center of attention all the time. Even though we were never very close, I made an effort to be a good big sister when I was growing up. Leah was born a few years after our dad remarried when I was 10 years old. She could do no wrong. She was the golden child. She was loved by my father and my stepmother, Margaret, and she understood how to take advantage of it. Leah was skilled at manipulating others, but I was unaware of how far she would go. At first it was subtle. Little remarks about me, such as Emma's acting weird lately, or Emma's been staying out late, would be made by Leah to Dad and Margaret. I'm concerned for her. They didn't give it much thought at first. At the age of 24, I was living alone and attempting to make sense of my post-college life. However, Leah continued to sow doubt, and I was unaware of it until it was too late. My father called me one day. I sensed something was wrong because of the tension in his voice. He said, "We need to talk, Emma. Will you please come over?" Unaware that my entire world was going to fall apart, I went to their house. Margaret appeared to have made up her mind about me when I entered the living room since she was sitting on the couch with her arms crossed. Leah was also present, but she appeared far too innocent to be the person who had just turned my family against me. Dad wasted little time. "I need you to be honest with us about what Leah told us. Do you use drugs?" It was so ridiculous that I laughed. "What? No, of course not. What is the source of this?" Margaret squinted her eyes. "Leah reported that during your stay last weekend, she discovered some pills in your room." I went cold. I believed that Leah had not been in my room. Nothing suspicious was ever left there by me. That is untrue. I have no idea what she is discussing. Leah, however, spoke out, her big eyes and phony worry evident. "Emma, I have been quite concerned about you, but I didn't want to say anything. I felt you might need help because of the unusual way you've been acting." I gaped in shock as I looked at her. "You're telling lies. Never in my life have I used drugs." However, what I stated was irrelevant. The untruth had already been ingrained in their heads by Leah. Margaret and Dad looked at each other, and I knew they trusted her more than I did. The fact that I had never before given them any cause to suspect me was irrelevant. Margaret continued, "That's not all. Leah said that you've had relationships with dubious individuals. Are you selling yourself, Emma?" It seemed as if someone had hit me. Because of what Leah said, my own stepmother, who had reared me for years, was accusing me of being a prostitute. It was unbelievable to me. "No, it's unbelievable that you would even ask me that. Leah is telling lies." Again though, it didn't feel like my words mattered. They were entangled in the web that Leah had spun. Dad continued, "Emma," in a softer tone now, as if he wanted to believe me but was unable to. "All we want to do is assist you. We must know if you are in difficulties." "I'm not having any problems." With tears in my eyes, I screamed, "Leah is deceiving you." Leah gave me a wide-eyed stare while continuing to play the innocent victim. "I'm only attempting to assist you, Emma. I don't want you to become involved in negative situations like some of my pals did." I was unable to bear to look at her. "You're intentionally doing this," I spit out. "You wish for them to despise me." Margaret got to her feet. "That's sufficient, Emma. We can't trust you unless you can be truthful with us. We must step back, even if we love you." Step back. They were expressing that they no longer wanted me around. That day, I felt numb when I left the house. Leah's falsehoods had caused my own family, who were meant to support me, to turn against me. I was at a loss for what to do. My mother lived across the nation, and although she believed me, there wasn't much she could do from such a distance. Worst of all, Leah continued to embellish her lies. She began spreading tales about me being a drug addict across the town. After hearing the rumors, my supervisor fired me because he didn't want an untrustworthy employee. My friends stopped phoning, and I felt even more alone. I lost everything because of Leah's lies. My reputation, my career, and my family. She was enjoying the attention as I was in a downward spiral. Whenever I attempted to approach her, she reframed the situation so that I appeared to be the unstable one. When Dad contacted me again to inform me that they no longer wanted me around, it was the last straw. It's best if you stay away, Emma, until you can get help. You must not be around Leah. She has endured enough. Had enough? In their perspective, Leah was the victim, even though I had lost everything. I was finished. In an attempt to start again, I packed up my belongings and relocated to a different city. However, the harm was already done. I wasn't sure whether my relationship with my family could ever be restored once it was destroyed. Months passed, and each time I considered contacting them, I recalled their initial reaction. As if I were a complete stranger rather than their daughter. For that, I couldn't forgive them, and I couldn't forgive Leah either. However, as time went on, I started to question whether Leah's actions were more complex. What type of individual would ruin someone's life by lying like that? Was she experiencing something more serious than jealousy? I had to move on with my life, with or without them, so it didn't really matter anymore. The agony of losing my family still aches a year after everything fell apart, even though I've been able to restore some of what I lost. I'm not sure if they'll ever expose Leah's deceit or if I'll ever be able to trust them again. One thing is certain though, they will have to confront the reality of Leah's true nature if they ever hope to have me back in their life. Holding my breath is not an option. It only grew worse after the altercation with my family. I made an effort to move on, but it wasn't that easy. The wound from the betrayal festered and got deeper every day. My life was tainted by Leah's falsehoods, and I was unable to avoid the repercussions. Not only did I lose my friends and work, but I also lost my identity. The final betrayal occurred when my father kicked me out of the house, challenging everything I believed to be true about myself. I can still clearly remember the day it happened. Desperate to convince my father of the truth, I had returned to his home. Perhaps if I calmly and directly explained everything to him, he would comprehend. I wanted to think that the father who reared me was still inside of him, the father who taught me how to ride a bike, who used to support me at soccer matches, and who always emphasized the importance of family comes first. I wanted my father to be like that again. However, I could feel the tension in the air as soon as I went through the door. Margaret was sitting with her arms folded in the kitchen, looking at me as if I were a nasty object that needed to be removed. Naturally, Leah was not present, but I knew she was there, most likely listening in the background while she waited for everything to fall apart the way she always desired. With a harsh expression on his face, my father stood at the kitchen counter as though he had already decided before I had a chance to say anything. I said, attempting to speak steadily, "Dad, we need to talk. You must hear my side of the story." The hush that followed his delayed response was oppressive. My heart was thumping louder in my throat with every second that went by. He sighed at last. "Emma, I'm not sure if I have anything more to say. You've been granted time. We have attempted to assist. You haven't assisted me at all." With a trembling voice, I shot back. "All you've heard is Leah. I can verify that everything she has told you is false. Just listen to me, please." I could feel Margaret's judgment stabbing me as she shook her head. "We've heard enough, Emma. Leah has just been worried for you and you haven't done anything to disprove her." I became so frustrated that I was unable to contain it any longer. "Leah is lying out of jealousy. This is how she receives the attention she has always desired. Do you not see? She's playing tricks on you." However, my words were ignored. My father's face remained unchanged. He wasn't even taking into account my version of events. "This isn't good for you or Leah," he stated in a quiet but forceful voice. "Emma, I believe it would be best if you stopped visiting, at least until you received assistance." "Ask for assistance." Incredulous, I repeated. "You believe that I am the one in need of assistance? Nothing has gone wrong on my end. You're tossing me out because of Leah's falsehoods, even though I'm not selling myself or using drugs." My dad's eyes become stony. "This hostility in the house is unacceptable. I apologize, but you must go." Margaret's lips formed a narrow line as she nodded in agreement. "It's best that way." Stunned, I stood there. It was this. I was their own kid, and they were choose Leah's lies above me. I had the impression that everything I had ever done for them, every loving moment, every memory we had together, was being instantly obliterated. I gave my father one last glance in the hopes that he might change his mind or show some glimmer of hesitation. However, nothing was present. I couldn't find him. Without saying another word, I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me with tears in my eyes. A final brutal punctuation to the life I had known, The sound reverberated in my mind. The initial months following expulsion were a haze of hopelessness. While I was trying to put my life back together, I moved in with a friend named Jessica, who graciously allowed me to rest on her couch. But despite my best efforts to divert my attention, I was unable to get rid of the sense of abandonment. My chest ached every time I saw a family in the park or heard someone talk about their parents. Leah's actions of turning everyone I cared about against me were on my mind constantly. Jessica made an effort to be encouraging, but it was clear that she didn't completely get what I was going through. One evening, as we sat on her small balcony, she said, "Perhaps you should just get in touch with them again. By now they might have calmed down. You could." "No," I cut in, my tone acrid. "I'm not wanted by them. They were quite explicit about that." She gave me a pitying glance, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. I knew she wanted to help, but you can't truly comprehend what it's like to have your family turn against you, to be deceived by those who are meant to love you without conditions, unless you've been there yourself. It wasn't easy, but I tried to reconstruct my life over the next 5 years. Even in the new city, the rumors that Leah disseminated had followed me. There were whispers about me. I applied for employment, but every time I was turned down, it felt like another nail in the coffin of who I was before. People's perceptions of me changed. They thought I was broken and unreliable. Then, almost 2 years after my expulsion, an unforeseen circumstance occurred. I was working at a little cafe on a Saturday afternoon. Even though it wasn't my ideal career, working as a barista was a reliable job that helped me pay my bills. A man entered when I was cleaning the counter. Although he had a somewhat familiar appearance, I was unable to identify him. He paused before asking, "Emma?" Curious, I turned to him. "Yeah?" He gave a clumsy smile. "I doubt that you recall me. I'm Leah's Dylan." When Leah's name was spoken, my stomach fell. Dylan. God, I now recalled him. When we were younger, he had dated Leah for a couple of years. Around the time Leah began spreading those stories about me, they broke up. Why on earth was he in this place? All I wanted to do was turn and leave, but I mustered a kind grin. "Oh, Dylan, I see. What's going on?" He raked a hand through his hair and shifted uneasily. "I realize this may seem strange, but I've been intending to speak with you for some time. After everything that has transpired, I simply need to clear my conscience, even if I wasn't sure if I should." I arched an eyebrow. "Clear your conscience?" He seemed truly sorry as he sighed. "It has to do with Leah and what she said about you. The prostitution and the drugs were all lies." My throat tightened each breath. It felt more genuine after hearing it from someone else who knew Leah well. I answered, "I know that," in a tone that was colder than I had intended. "But my family doesn't." Dylan looked at the floor and nodded. "I apologize. I understand. I should have spoken out sooner, but I was unaware of the extent to which she would take it. She had her problems, Leah. Emma, she was always envious of you. I believe that's the reason she did it." I gazed at him, attempting to comprehend his words. "Jealous of what?" "You," stated Dylan plainly. "You had your own life, were older, and were more self-reliant. Even if you were unaware of it, Leah always felt as though she was living in your shadow. She wanted attention, and when she saw that making you appear terrible would get it, she went for it. She told me about it after our breakup, although I was unaware of its full scope at the time. Despite her shame, she was unsure of how to stop. My mind was racing. Had Leah acknowledged it? Had she really admitted to fabricating it all? And Dylan had been aware all along. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Anger rising within me, I demanded. "This could have been avoided by you. Years ago my family could have learned the truth." Dylan repeated, "I'm sorry," in a low voice. I had no idea how. Leah has a way of making people question themselves, and I didn't think they would trust me. She also played with my head. Barely believing what I was hearing, I shook my head. Was jealousy the ultimate cause of all the suffering and heartache Leah had caused? That's why I was expelled by my father? That's why I lost everything in my life, my career, my family? Dylan waited for me to say something. But I was at a loss for words. I was no longer even able to look at him. I was only angry. I murmured, "You should go," and turned my back on him. He repeated, "Emma, I'm really sorry," one final time before slipping out of the cafe. I tried to stabilize myself as the weight of everything fell on me while I stood there clutching the counter. My life had been ruined by Leah's falsehoods, and it was all because she was envious. Finally, years later, I knew the truth. Now though, what good was it? I kept thinking about approaching Leah after that day. My anger was unlike anything I had ever felt before. It engulfed me, recreating every moment of betrayal and keeping me up at night. I was looking for answers. I wanted her to confess what she had done to everyone, including our father and me. Dylan had told me about Leah's deception years ago. I initially believed that learning the truth would bring some sort of closure, but it just served to reignite old hurts. I didn't need their apologies, especially not just now, because I had constructed my life without my family's love and support. For the first time in a long time, I was in a good place. More importantly, I had found someone who embraced me for who I was, without the baggage of my history, and I had a new career that I loved. Marketing for a nonprofit. 2 years ago, Noah and I met through common acquaintances, and things felt natural as soon as we spoke. He saw me, Emma, as the person I had become in spite of everything, without interfering in my family life or criticizing me for the strained ties. I thought my life was finally coming together again when Noah proposed. We were preparing a modest, low-key wedding. I didn't require a lavish party. It was important that we begin our new life together and create a family free from deceit and treachery. Life wasn't that easy, of course. It had been years since I had spoken to Margaret or my father. I severed all connections after they expelled me. I blocked them on social media, switched cities, and updated my phone number. Occasionally, I would learn through rumors that they wanted to know how I was doing, but I never answered. I remained silent even after Dylan came clean. How would I respond? That they blindly trusted Leah and believed a lie about me, their own daughter, and that I had to suffer as a result. For that, I couldn't forgive them. Then, around 6 months into the planning of our wedding, I received an unexpected email. My father gave it to me. I opened the screen after staring at it for a very long time. As I read his words, my pulse raced in my chest. Since you departed, Emma, you have been on my mind every single day. I can't express how sorry I am for all that has transpired, and I know we made a grave error by choosing to believe Leah over you. Margaret and I want to put things right because we miss you more than words can express. I've heard that you're getting married via a pal. As I've always dreamed, I would adore being there to accompany you down the aisle. Give me an opportunity to express my regret, Emma. With trembling hands, I set down my phone. Did he wish to apologize? After all these years. He wanted to make amends after what they had done to me. I couldn't stop thinking about it for days. Noah asked me what was going on after noticing that I was preoccupied, but I was at a loss for words. I hadn't told him anything that had transpired with my family. Although he was aware of their absence from my life, he was unaware of the depth of the betrayal. It felt almost like another lifetime since I had buried it so deeply. I finally sat Noah down one evening and told him everything, including about Leah, my father, and Margaret, and how they had abandoned me when I most needed them. I informed him about Dylan's confession and how I still couldn't forgive them despite knowing the truth. With a contemplative expression on his face, Noah listened patiently without pressuring me to make a choice. There is nothing you owe them, he added quietly. You are free to choose not to have them at the wedding. Emma, this is your day. Our future is at stake, not the past. I was reassured by his remarks, but they didn't help me decide. Even though I knew my family would never be the same, I still felt a part of me missed them. I wanted my father to be present on one of the most significant days of my life, to escort me down the aisle. However, could I truly pardon them for their actions? I finally responded to my father's email 1 week later. I told him that although I was grateful for the apology, I wasn't prepared to move on. The devastation was too great. However, I was willing to allow him to attend the wedding if he realized that our relationship would never be the same. Margaret and Leah weren't invited. There was no negotiating that. My phone rang 2 days after I sent that email. Even though I didn't recognize the number, I felt compelled to take it up. My father's voice was tremulous and emotional as he said, Emma. At first I remained silent. I waited for him to say something, just listening. At last, he said, I received your email. I'm thrilled that you'll allow me to attend the wedding, but I must beg. Will you not extend an invitation to Leah? My stomach turned over. I could see where this was headed. No, father, Leah is not invited? You understand why. The person on the other end of the line paused for a while. His breathing was audible as he deliberated over his next sentence. She's your sister, Emma. She is still family. Even though I know what she did was horrible. Since then, she has matured significantly. She wants to make amends and is remorseful for what she done. I could sense my old wrath building. Leah ruined my life, Dad. You and Margaret blindly believed her lies, and I lost everything as a result. She cannot simply attend my wedding and act as like nothing is wrong. I get that, he responded in a beseeching tone. However, this is an opportunity for us to reunite and begin our family's healing process. If Leah isn't at your wedding, I can't attend. It wouldn't be appropriate. I went cold. A command. On my wedding day, he was threatening to not attend unless I included the guy who destroyed my life. Are you serious at this moment? My voice was thick with incredulity as I asked. Emma, I'm not kidding. I can't abandon Leah, even though I want to be there for you because I love you. She is also my daughter. I had the feeling that I would get sick. Are you really going to pick her over me once more? My voice quivered with anger as I asked. You're still supporting her in spite of everything that's happened? It's not about sides, he shouted frantically. It has to do with family. We must unite. No, I responded in a hard, icy tone. We wanted you to be there for me when I needed you. You didn't. And now you're attempting to spoil my happiness once more. Please don't do this, Emma, he pleaded. This can be fixed. No, we can't, Dad. My hand trembled as I hung up. My eyes were watering, but I fought the need to cry. I refused to let him, Leah, or anybody else ruin this day. To get here, I had had to fight too hard. It was bittersweet in the months before the wedding. On the one hand, I was getting married to my soulmate. My father, on the other hand, would not be present. Even though I stuck by my decision, it still stung. I secretly hoped that he would pick me. That he would see how much suffering he had caused by supporting Leah all those years ago. However, he didn't. He was unable to. I made an effort to concentrate on the positive aspects, such as selecting the ideal outfit, deciding on the food, and selecting flowers with my maid of honor, Rachel. Throughout it all, Noah was encouraging and never pushed me to bring Leah or my father. He saw that this wedding was not about the shattered remnants of my past, but rather about us and our future. Nevertheless, I couldn't help but feel the weight of my family's absence as the day drew near. My mom lived across the country, and we were no longer close, so I knew she couldn't make it. Although I didn't hold it against her, her attempt to maintain her objectivity during the whole situation with Leah caused a gulf between us that we were never able to fully close. Rachel threw me a tiny bachelorette party the night before the wedding. Just some nice laughter, lots of wine, and a few close friends. I was able to put everything else aside and simply have fun for a few hours. However, once the party ended and my friends departed, I was left sitting by myself in my apartment, gazing at my own wedding invitation. Even though I knew my father wouldn't show up, I had mailed him one. A part of me wanted to tear it up, to completely remove him from my life. However, another part of me, possibly the one that still missed the family I lost, was unable to do it. When the wedding day finally came, it was just as I had imagined. As Noah and I stood at the altar with our selected family and friends, the sun shone and the air was warm, and I felt at ease. My decision had been the right one. My dad wasn't present. Leah wasn't either. And I wasn't burdened by their absence for the first time. They weren't necessary for me to prove that I was happy and that I had moved on. It was sufficient that I had discovered my own happiness and my own family. I experienced a sense of closure as Noah and I exchanged vows, not the type that comes from reconciliation or forgiveness, but rather from making your own decisions and accepting that some scars cannot be healed. I felt liberated as we danced beneath the stars following the wedding. I had allowed the hurt of my family's betrayal to define me for a very long time, but now that I was standing next to Noah, I realized that my past did not dictate my future. Nothing, not Leah, not my father, not anyone, could take away the love and trust I had forged in my new existence. I felt whole for the first time in years. The day of the wedding had been ideal. I felt at peace for the first time in years as Noah and I stood at the altar. It was the start of a new chapter in my life, one free from the heartache, deceit, and betrayals of the past. For the first time, I gave myself permission to think that I could create a life without my family's shadow. However, reality struck in as Noah and I returned from our brief honeymoon in the days after the wedding. I felt burdened by my choice to sever my relationship with Margaret, Leah, and my father. They hadn't offered an apology or a last-minute request for pardon. By refusing to invite Leah and refusing to back down when my father gave me his ultimatum, I had made it plain that I was done. However, after you make those choices, the world doesn't end. Individuals change, and occasionally they spiral. 2 months or so after the wedding, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. My blood raced cold when I heard the message after I had left it on voicemail. This is Margaret, Emma, please give me a call back. It's Leah. She's in the medical facility. She attempted self-harm. Emma, please, we need you. I went cold. Leah had attempted suicide. I felt sick to my stomach for a moment. The sister that had destroyed my life, lied about me, and split up my family. Leah, was in the hospital after attempting suicide. I suppressed the guilt that washed over me. I was not at blame for this. I wasn't accountable for Leah's decisions. She had made them on her own. Nevertheless, it troubled me that Margaret had contacted me and begged me to come. In an attempt to determine Margaret's tone, I listened to the voicemail once more. Was it a desperate move? Fear? Feeling guilty? I had no idea. She was urging me to return to the mess I had worked so hard to escape, even though I hadn't spoken to her since I had gone. At last, I plucked up the confidence to tell Noah as he was in the kitchen preparing dinner. I said as neutrally as possible, I got a voicemail from Margaret. Leah is in the medical facility. She attempted self-harm. His forehead was wrinkled with worry as he looked up from the stove. What was it she said? Is Leah all right? I acknowledged. They didn't give much detail. Margaret immediately asked me to come to the hospital after saying she was there. She sounded frantic. After wiping his hands on a towel, Noah approached me and put a reassuring hand on my shoulder. How are you going to proceed? Uncertain, I shrugged. I'm not sure. After years of attempting to escape them all and the harm they inflicted, I feel as though I'm being pulled back into it. I'm not sure if I can make it. Noah spoke in a soft yet forceful tone. You owe them nothing, Emma. Your family made their decisions and Leah made hers. You are not accountable for her or her fate. Even though his statements confirmed what I was thinking, it didn't help me decide. There was a part of me that felt obligated, the part that still remembered Leah as the young child I had once attempted to be a big sister to. However, my logical side, which had established a life free of their poison, understood I couldn't turn back. I stayed up that night reliving the things that had brought us all to this point. The years of manipulation, the lies told by Leah, and the numerous times my father had picked her over me. With Leah in such a vulnerable state, was it really possible for me to return to their life at this point? What would that achieve? I considered the potential consequences of actually visiting the hospital. How would I respond? Would they want me to overlook Leah's suffering because she was in a horrible position and forgive her? What if I wasn't able to forgive her? What would happen if I went and it made things worse? I decided what I would do the following morning. I had no intention of going. I could tell Noah was worried, but he was on my side. Are you certain? He inquired. I don't want you to come to regret this. I tried to persuade myself as much as he did, saying, I'm sure. Leah got here because of her decisions. I've wasted too much time attempting to make things right that weren't my responsibility. I refused to be coerced into returning by their guilt. I didn't call Margaret back as a result. I chose not to visit the hospital. I stayed away because I preferred the tranquility I had battled so hard to the mayhem my family constantly brought. I got another message a few weeks later, this time from my dad. His voice was something I had not heard since the wedding ultimatum. It's Dad, Emma. I can see why you might be upset, but Leah is now in treatment and I believe it would be very meaningful for her if you came to see her. She is receiving assistance. She is attempting to atone for her actions and has acknowledged what she done. I realize this is a lot to ask, but perhaps it's time for the family to begin mending. Please give it some thought. I didn't respond, so I erased the mail. Leah was in treatment. My father said she was seeking assistance and confessing to all she did. However, I was wise enough to avoid becoming entangled in that web again. Even if Leah was making amends now, it didn't negate what she had done to me. She had been manipulating others for years. The years of harm and the reality that my family had deserted me when I most needed them were not undone by it. I got additional messages in the weeks that followed. Margaret called multiple times and left heartfelt, lengthy voicemails expressing their desire to reunite as a family and how Leah was getting better. To give Leah a chance, my father texted me to come see her in the rehab center, but I consistently ignored him. I had already decided. About 6 months after Leah's suicide attempt, I happened to run into Dylan one afternoon. It came as a complete surprise. On a bright Saturday, Noah and I were having lunch when I noticed him across the street. At the same moment he noticed me and he approached before I could dodge him. Emma, he murmured with a startled tone. I was surprised to see you here. A rush of unease washed over me as I attempted a grin. Since Dylan told me about Leah's falsehoods years ago, I hadn't seen him. It felt weird to see him now, after everything. Yeah, just out with Noah, I said, nodding to my husband, who was observing us from the cafe table with interest. After a little pause, Dylan resumed his conversation. I'm not trying to bother you, but have you heard anything about Leah? I tensed up. Enough has been said. He went on, disregarding the icy tone in my voice. She's in rehab. Emma, she's making a sincere effort. She has now acknowledged everything, Even though I know she damaged you. Perhaps she is resolving her problems. I interjected, my voice hard. Dylan, stop. I'm glad she's receiving assistance, but it doesn't make a difference in my opinion. I've moved on. Dylan's eyes were a mix of grief and pity as he gazed at me. I truly understand. However, Emma, individuals can change. Perhaps Leah is attempting to make amends. I became impatient and yelled, I don't need her amends. I have no obligation to her. Her falsehoods caused me to suffer for years. Because she feels bad, I won't allow her back into my life at this time. Dylan let out a sigh, obviously understanding that he couldn't make me change my decision. All right, I simply felt you ought to be aware. I wanted the talk to stop, so I nodded. I appreciate you telling me. Before leaving, he offered me a melancholy little smile. After observing him leave, Noah turned to face me. Are you all right? Even though I wasn't positive, I nodded. Dylan had reminded me of past pains and memories, but I wasn't going to allow it to take me back there. I said, I'm fine, attempting to put the encounter behind me. All I want to do is concentrate on us and our lives. The texts from Margaret and my father became less frequent over time. I didn't care that Leah had finished her time in rehab and seemed to be doing well. I had decided to permanently cut them off, and I had no intention of changing my mind. Late at night, I would occasionally ponder what my life could have been like if my father had never believed Leah and she had never told those falsehoods. Would our family still exist? Would the course of events have been different? However, those sentiments were short-lived, and I consistently ignored them. With Noah, I now had my own family. For me, it was sufficient that we were creating a life together free from the poisonous dynamics of my past. The calls eventually ceased completely. Despite their entreaties, my father and Margaret must have recognized that I was not returning. Leah also appeared to realize that she couldn't repair what she had damaged. So I put the past behind me, where it belonged, and moved on. My family kicked me out because my sister falsely accused me of stealing her engagement ring. 3 years later, they discovered it in the garbage disposal. I never imagined I'd be telling this story, but here goes. I'm Elliot, 26 years old, and 3 years ago my life was flipped upside down by a false charge made by my older sister, Gemma, 29. I grew up in a little Ohio town with my parents, John, 55M, and Lisa, 53F, and my sister, Gemma. We lived in a modest 2-story house that my parents purchased when they first married. It was not fancy, but it was home. My father worked as a high school math teacher, and my mother was a nurse at the local hospital. They weren't wealthy, but they made sure we got all we needed. Growing up, Gemma and I were quite close. We'd spend hours playing in our backyard, climbing the ancient oak tree and inventing complicated games. She was always the leader, making up the rules and plots, while I was content to follow along. As we grew older, however, things began to alter. Gemma was always an overachiever. She was the top of her class, captain of the debate team, and appeared to thrive in whatever she tried. In contrast, I was more laid back. I performed okay in school, but I was never as motivated as Gemma. As we approached our adolescence, this disparity began to erode our relationship. By the time Gemma left for college, we had grown apart. She attended a prominent university on a scholarship, whilst I stayed local and attended community college. I didn't know what I wanted to accomplish with my life, so I took a range of classes to figure it out. Gemma relocated to the city after graduating from college and began working at a large marketing agency. She'd return home for holidays and occasional weekends, full of stories about her fascinating life and excellent profession. I couldn't help feeling inferior in contrast. I was still living at home, working part-time at the local grocery shop, and trying to figure out my next step. Despite our differences, I always assumed Gemma and I were fine. We weren't as close as we had were, but I assumed it was just part of growing up. I had no idea how quickly everything might fall apart. Gemma and her boyfriend, Tom, 31M, were engaged 3 years ago. They had been dating for 2 years, and everyone was ecstatic. Tom was a lawyer from a wealthy family, and my parents idolized him. He proposed with a stunning diamond ring that has been in his family for generations. Gemma was overjoyed and couldn't stop showing it off to everyone. The engagement celebration was a large occasion. My parents brought what seemed like the entire town to our house to celebrate. I recall feeling a little out of place among the rich people Gemma and Tom had invited from the city. I remained close to my old high school pals who were still in town, feeling more at ease with them than with Gemma's sophisticated set. A month after the engagement, all hell broke out. It was Tuesday afternoon and I had the day off work. I was in my room, playing video games and enjoying the quiet house. Gemma was visiting for a week, taking some time off work to begin arranging the wedding with our mother. I heard Gemma return home from a shopping trip with Mom. They were talking and laughing downstairs. I didn't think much about it and returned to my game. Around an hour later, I heard Gemma scream. I ran downstairs to check what was going on, and she accused me of taking her engagement ring. She explained that she took it off while doing dishes and left it on the kitchen counter. When she returned to grab it, it was gone. I was stunned and quickly denied taking it, but Gemma refused to listen. She kept shrieking that I was the only other one in the home, so it must have been me. She mentioned how I was always jealous of her success and how I probably wanted to sell the ring so I could finally move out and accomplish something with my life. Our parents arrived home in the midst of the chaos, and Gemma recounted her version of events. To my horror, they believed her wholeheartedly. My mother began to cry, questioning how I could have done such a thing to my own sister. My father merely looked at me with disappointment in his eyes. They began searching my room and turned everything upside down. They didn't find the ring, but they did discover some money I had saved from my job at the supermarket. It wasn't much, maybe a few hundred, but Gemma quickly picked up on it, claiming I must have sold the ring and that's where the money came from. I tried to explain that I had been saving for months and was considering taking some classes at the local community college, but no one listened. The following few days were a nightmare. My parents and Gemma repeatedly pressed me to confess and return the ring. They threatened to contact the police if I did not come clean. I was afraid and felt entirely alone. Nobody in my family believed me, and I was treated like a criminal in my own home. I tried contacting several of my pals, but the majority of them had moved away after high school. The few who remained in town appeared unwilling to become engaged in family strife. I felt more alone than ever. After a week of relentless accusations and threats, my parents made a decision that would alter my life forever. They told me I needed to go. They said they couldn't trust me longer and that I was putting shame on the family. They gave me 2 days to pack my belongings and leave. I was devastated. I had nowhere to go and didn't know what to do. My best buddy from high school, Ryan, 26M, who had recently returned to town after serving in the army, offered to let me rest on his couch for a time. But I knew I couldn't stay there long. His apartment was small, and he was still getting back on his feet. I packed everything I could into a backpack and an old duffel bag, including clothes, books, my laptop, and a few memories from brighter times. As I was leaving, I noticed Gemma eyeing me from her old bedroom window. I thought I caught a glint of doubt in her eyes, but she quickly turned aside. Walking out of that house, the only one I'd ever known, was the most difficult thing I had ever done. I felt deceived and abandoned by those who were supposed to love me completely. The saddest part was that I had done nothing wrong. For the next 2 months, I alternated between Ryan's couch and cheap motels as I could afford them. I took on any odd jobs I could find to make ends meet. I've worked as a dishwasher, dog walker, and even spent a few weeks on a construction job. It was a challenge, but I was determined to prove my innocence and succeed on my own. Eventually, I got a solid job at a warehouse on the outskirts of town. The job was hard, the hours were long, but the pay was consistent. The salary wasn't spectacular, but it allowed me to rent a modest room in a shared house with some other warehouse workers. I gradually began rebuilding my life, but the grief of what had happened never went away. I'd lie awake at night, repeating the events in my memory and wondering how they had gone so wrong. How could my family have turned against me so quickly? How could Gemma, who had grown up with me and knew me better than anyone else, believe I would do such a thing? I cut all communication with my family. They attempted to contact me several times in the beginning. My mother would leave heartfelt voicemails urging me to come home and make things right. My father sent a few terse text messages indicating we needed to discuss. Gemma did show up at the warehouse once, but I declined to see her. I couldn't bear to speak with them after what they had done. They were no longer my family. For 3 years this was how I lived. I made new friends at work and in my shared home. We'd hang out after shifts, drink beer, and watch games. It wasn't the life I had envisioned for myself, but it was mine, and I had created it from scratch. I worked hard and was even promoted to shift supervisor at the warehouse. I started attending online classes to learn business management. I was slowly deciding what I wanted to accomplish with my life, but there was always a part of me that was outraged and wounded by what had occurred. I missed my previous life and family, but I couldn't forgive them for not believing me. Every holiday season was challenging. When I saw families shopping together or heard Christmas music, I felt a sense of sadness for what I had lost. Then last week, I received an unexpected email from my father. The subject line simply stated, "We need to talk." The message was brief, stating that they needed to meet with me immediately and that it was regarding the ring incident. At first, I was tempted to dismiss it as I did with all of their previous attempts to reach me. But something made me hesitate. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe a small part of me still wanted a conclusion. After arguing with myself for hours, I decided to listen to them. I called my father, and what he said left me stunned. The ring had been found. Gemma had accidentally knocked it into the garbage disposal while doing the dishes. She only recognized this a few days ago, when the disposal began making unusual noises and they summoned a plumber to inspect it. My father claimed Gemma was upset when she understood what had transpired and that I had been telling the truth all along. He stated they all felt bad about what they had done to me and wanted to make things right. I hung up the phone, experiencing a swirl of emotions. On the one hand, I felt vindicated. I had always told the truth and now everyone knew it. However, I was angry. I was outraged that it took 3 years to find out the truth, that I had missed so much time with my family, and that I had fought alone for so long when I had done nothing wrong. Now I'm at a crossroads. My family wants me to return home. They claim they want to make things right. Gemma has been phoning and messaging nonstop, asking for forgiveness. But I'm not certain I can forgive them. They pushed me out without hesitation. Chose to think the worst of me, and left me to fend for myself for 3 years. Part of me wants to send them all to hell and let them deal with the shame of what they did to me. But another part of me misses my previous life and wonders whether there is a way to rebuild what we've lost. I do not know what to do. Should I give them an opportunity to make amends, or should I continue living the life I've created for myself without them? I'm torn and could appreciate some outside insight on this whole situation. Update 1. It's been a week since my previous post, and a lot has happened. I'd want to thank everyone for their advice and support. It truly helped me go through my emotions and figure out what to do. After much debate, I chose to meet with my family. I believed I owed it to myself to confront them and seek closure, even if I wasn't convinced about reconciliation. We decided to meet in a neutral site, a modest coffee shop in the next town over. I chose it because it was far enough from our hometown that we wouldn't run across anyone we knew, yet close enough that anyone could get there without too much effort. I was quite nervous on the day of the meeting. I hadn't seen my family in 3 years, and I wasn't sure what to expect. I arrived at the coffee shop early and chose a table in the corner where we could enjoy some solitude. When they walked in, it was like a hit in the belly. Seeing them after 3 years was intense. My mother burst into tears the moment she saw me. She was older than I remembered, with more gray hair and creases around her eyes. My father appeared weary and tired, his shoulders drooping as if he were carrying a huge weight. Gemma couldn't look me in the eye at first. She appeared smaller and less confident than the sister I recalled. We sat down, and for a time, no one knew what to say. They all started talking at once, with apologies falling out. My parents said they had failed as parents by not trusting me and kicking me out. They admitted that they had regretted their decision every day since, but pride and humiliation had prevented them from reaching out sooner. My father, who had always been a man of few words, talked for hours about how he had repeated those days in his head, trying to figure out how he could have been so blind. He claimed he had always prided himself on being fair and reasonable, but that emotion had clouded his judgment when it counted the most. My mother, through tears, told me how she had preserved my room exactly as I had left it, hoping that one day I would return. She stated she would wake up in the middle of the night, thinking she had heard me coming home, only to realize what had transpired. Gemma burst into tears, stating she would never forgive herself for accusing me and damaging our relationship. She mentioned how she had always looked up to me when we were youngsters, even though I was younger. She admitted that she had been so preoccupied with her own life and troubles that she had lost sight of what was truly important. As they talked, memories of our childhood came flooding back. I remembered how Gemma stuck up for me when I was bullied in middle school. I reflected on all the times we had laughed together, exchanged secrets, and supported each other during difficult times. It made the betrayal hurt even more, but it also reminded me of the fantastic times we'd had. I heard everything they said, but I couldn't bring myself to forgive them just yet. The anguish and resentment from the previous 3 years were still too raw. I informed them that I needed time to comprehend things. They appeared to comprehend and did not push for more. My mom wanted to hug me before we went, but I backed away. I wasn't prepared for that kind of closeness yet. The hurt look on her face almost convinced me to change my decision, but I remained firm. I needed to protect myself emotionally. After the meeting, I returned to my apartment and carefully considered what I wanted. Did I want to go back to my previous life? Can I ever trust them again? Was it worth attempting to repair our relationship? I recognized that, while I missed having a family, I had also developed significantly in the previous 3 years. I had become self-sufficient, robust, and had created a life for myself from scratch. I wasn't the same person they'd kicked out 3 years before. I reflected about my warehouse work, my online education, and the friends I'd made. I had worked hard to reach where I was, and I was pleased with what I had accomplished on my own. The thought of abandoning that and returning to my old life felt awful. At the same time, I couldn't deny that seeing my family had triggered a variety of feelings. Despite everything, I still loved and missed them. I wondered if I could have a relationship with them while still keeping my independence. After a few days of deliberation, I reached a decision. I called my parents and explained that while I appreciated their apology, I was not yet ready to fully reconcile. I informed them that I needed more time and space to heal. I also established some boundaries. I indicated I was willing to maintain minimal contact with them, but I wasn't going back home or pretending nothing had occurred. I told them that if we were to continue our connection, it had to be on my terms. They expressed disappointment but said they understood. They promised to respect my boundaries and allow me the time I needed. My mother asked if she might phone me once a week to check in, and I agreed, assuming it would be a nice approach to gradually re-establish trust. As for Gemma, I've decided to keep my distance for now. Her actions had affected me the most, and I wasn't ready to forgive her just yet. I told her I needed more time before I could consider having another relationship with her. She was upset, but explained that she understood and would wait until I was ready. It's been a rough week, with many emotional highs and lows. I've had moments when I questioned my decision, wondering if I'm being too harsh or if I'm passing up an opportunity to reunite with my family. But then I recall how quickly they turned on me, and I realize I'm doing the right thing by taking things slowly. I've also started researching therapeutic possibilities. Many of you suggested it in the comments, and I believe it would be beneficial to have a professional to speak with while I navigate this tricky situation. I've never been to therapy before, so I'm a little nervous, but I think it could be beneficial to me. For the time being, my primary focus is on my job and studies. I have a huge project coming up at work, and I'm determined not to let all of this family drama distract me from my goals. I am also thinking about moving to a better apartment. I've been saving, and I think I'm ready for a place of my own without roommates. Thank you again for your support. It's comforting to know that there are individuals out there who understand and care, even if we've never met. I'll provide an update if anything substantial changes. Update 2. It's been almost a month since my last update, and I'd like to share some developments. I've been sticking to the boundaries I've established with my family. We've had a few phone calls and text messages, but nothing particularly intense. It's been okay, awkward at times, but not as painful as I expected. My parents have mostly respected my wishes. They check in every now and then, but they don't ask for more than I'm prepared to provide. I can tell they are working hard to rebuild trust, but it is a slow process. My mother calls once a week, as we promised. These calls were strained at first, with extended silences, but they are becoming easier. We usually discuss neutral issues, such as her employment at the hospital, the weather, and my online education. It's not much, but it's a beginning. My father has been sending me short emails, usually simply to check in or share something he thinks I'd be interested in. Last week, he forwarded me an article about a new business launching in our hometown. It was a little gesture, but it reminded me of how he would clip newspaper stories for me. When I was younger, Gemma struggled with the barrier I'd created between us. She sent me many long, emotional texts apologizing and pleading for the opportunity to make things right. I responded simply, stating that I need more time. It's difficult, but I'm holding firm on this. I know she's hurting, but I'm not prepared to deal with her feelings on top of mine. The big news is that I have started treatment. I discovered a counselor that specializes in family trauma, and we've had a few sessions thus far. It has been difficult to bring up all of the grief from the past, but I believe it is helping. My therapist is assisting me in resolving my anger and trust issues, as well as providing me with strategies for setting good boundaries. In our last session, we discussed how the incident with the ring was more than just the accusation, but also years of feeling like I didn't measure up to Gemma's accomplishments. It's made me recognize that there were difficulties in our family dynamic long before the ring incident and that healing will require addressing those as well. One unanticipated result of all of this is that I've become closer to my pals, particularly Ryan. They've been extremely supportive throughout the entire ordeal. Ryan even offered to accompany me to any future family meetings for moral support. It's taught me that family is more than just blood. It's about who supports you when things go rough. Work has been a welcome distraction. I've poured myself into my career and even received a modest promotion. I'm now in charge of inventory management for my shift, which means additional responsibility and a minor pay increase. It is nice to have something pleasant to focus on. In terms of my living situation, I've decided to stay where I am for the time being. It's not much, but it's mine and symbolizes the independence I've worked so hard for. My parents offered to help me find a better place, but I declined. I have to do this on my own. However, I began to carefully consider choices for furthering my studies. A state institution located approximately an hour distant provides night classes. I am considering applying to their business program. It would be a significant move, but I believe I'm prepared for it. Overall, I'm taking it one day at a time. Certain days are harder than others. There are times when I mourn our easy connection as a family, but then I recall how fast they turned on me, and I realize I can't rush this process. My therapist thinks it's good to have mixed feelings about everything. She encourages me to be patient with myself and not feel obligated to forgive before I'm ready. We're working on techniques for dealing with upcoming family gatherings and holidays, which are making me more apprehensive than I'd like to admit. For the time being, my priorities are recovering and creating a life I can be proud of, with or without my family. It's not easy, but I'm positive about the future. I'm learning that it's all right to put myself first, and that creating boundaries does not make me a horrible person. Thank you for your continuing support. Your comments and messages have provided me with strength during this process. It's comforting to know I'm not alone in coping with familial issues like these. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my original post, so I thought it was time for a last update. A lot has changed during the last few months. The biggest news is that I've decided to relocate to a different place in search of a new employment opportunity. It's a significant advancement in my profession, and I'm looking forward to the new opportunities. The job is with a logistics company, and the work is comparable to what I did at the warehouse, but on a much larger size. It's a management role, which I've been working toward for a while. The income is much higher than what I was making previously, and it includes benefits such as health insurance and a 401k plan. Before making this decision, I had a lengthy conversation with my therapist. We talked about how this move will influence my healing process and my relationship with my family. Finally, we agreed that this could be a good thing for me, an opportunity to fully stand on my own 2 feet and identify myself outside of the family drama. I informed my parents about the transfer last week. They were astonished and disappointed, yet they expressed their understanding. My mother cried a little, stating she had hoped we'd have more time to restore our relationship before my departure. My father was more stoic, but I could see he was disappointed too. They were both concerned about me being alone in a strange place, but I told them that I'd be okay. Gemma took it the hardest. After I told her, she showed up unannounced to my flat, pleading with me not to go. She admitted that she felt like she was losing me all over again. It was a challenging conversation, but I held my ground. I informed her that this was something I needed to do for myself, and that our relationship was not in a position where her opinion could influence my decision. Our relationship is improving, but it is not perfect. We've enjoyed several family dinners in recent months. They've been uncomfortable and awkward at times, but we're gradually learning to be around each other again. Trust is still a major issue. I sometimes question their motives, wondering if they truly believe what they say or if they are simply attempting to relieve their guilt. My therapist has been crucial throughout this. She has helped me analyze my emotions and create boundaries. She has emphasized that forgiveness does not imply forgetting or pretending that the trauma never happened. It's about letting go of my anger in order to find peace of mind. I've taken that to heart. While I don't believe I'll ever forget what happened, I'm attempting to forgive my family. Not for their sake, but for mine. It was hard to carry around all of my anger and bitterness, and I'm ready to let it go. As I prepare for this relocation, I've been thinking about everything that has transpired. 3 years ago, I thought my life was finished. I'd lost everything, including everyone I cared about. But now I see how much I've learned from that experience. I'm stronger, more independent, and have a better understanding of my own worth than I ever had. I don't know what the future holds for me and my family. We intend to stay in touch once I relocate, with weekly phone calls and visits during the holidays. It's a start. Perhaps, with time and distance, we will be able to create something new. For the time being, my attention is focused on the future. I'm excited about my new work, the new city, and the opportunities that await me. I've started looking for apartments online and researched the region where I'll be residing. It's a mix of excitement and trepidation, but I'm largely looking forward to this next chapter in my life. Whatever happens to my family, I'm confident I'll be okay. I've shown to myself that I can deal with whatever life throws at me, and I've learned the value of surrounding myself with people that believe in and support me, whether they're related or not. My wife cheated on me with our horrible neighbor while I was paralyzed, But a life-changing surgery gave me a second chance to rebuild my life. My name is Ethan John. In the last year or two, my life has been a roller coaster of unbelievable lows and surprising highs. It all began with a terrible accident that left me paralyzed and unable to move or talk. But this was only the beginning of my horror. What followed was a string of betrayals, abuse, and misery that nearly destroyed me. Despite everything, I managed to survive and even thrive. Here's my tale. I was involved in an accident. I was riding my motorcycle on a lovely afternoon when a truck driver, apparently unaware of me, pulled out onto the highway. The collision was terrible. I don't remember much of the impact, just a flash of metal and then darkness. When I awoke in the hospital, I was unable to move. I could not talk. I could scarcely blink. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive. Lucky? That word struck me as a cruel joke at the moment. I was immobilized from the neck down, unable to do more than breathe and blink. I couldn't swallow without trouble. Going to the bathroom? Don't get me started on the humiliation. The only silver lining, if you can call it that, was the multi-million-dollar payout I received from the transportation firm. All of my medical expenditures were paid, and I would receive a monthly stipend to sustain my wife, Laura, and me for the rest of our lives. We were financially secure, thanks to my disability payments and Laura's job as a paralegal. But money could not repair what was broken within me. After 6 months in the hospital, I was finally allowed to return home. I believed things would improve once I was in familiar surroundings, but I was mistaken. That's when my life took a darker turn. How's that? The counselor inquired, staring at me. I'm quite ashamed. I don't think I can even remember what happened in those 6 months, I remarked, a tear running down my cheek. That's okay, she responded in response. Everything you say here will remain confidential. Remember that I'm here to help you heal. I nodded and took a glass of water before proceeding. Let us start with your marriage. Tell me a little about that. I told her about my marriage to Laura, how we met in college and got married after we graduated. I was only 25 years old when my injury occurred, and we had been married for 3 years. I worked as a mechanical engineer, and she was a paralegal at a large law company downtown. We were able to afford a spacious 3-bedroom apartment. Originally, we intended to convert one bedroom into a nursery. We both used the second bedroom as an office, but after my accident, the nursery became my room because it was spacious enough to house all of my medical equipment. Laura did her best to care for me for the first month or two, but it was evident that she wasn't up to the task, particularly with the bathroom. So she sought assistance. Greg and Callie Wallace, our neighbors, offered to help in any way they could. At the time, I considered them pals. Greg, an attorney at Laura's business, frequently drove her to work. Callie was a nurse at a nearby hospital, so she would check in on me from time to time to ensure I was okay. She even helped us get a home health nurse to check on me during the day. Laura was clearly not up to the task after a month, even with all of the assistance. That's when Greg stepped in. The counselor asked, yes. It began innocently enough, but I could see he had feelings for my wife. She frequently broke down crying, and he was always there to soothe her. I could hear them in the front room, making out on our couch. Then he would take her into our former master bedroom and have sex with her. But it didn't end there, did it? The counselor inquired. I shake my head. No, I replied. Afterward, he would come into my room to taunt me, telling me how he felt after screwing my wife. I saw the counselor's expression. Sorry, I apologized. Where was his wife during all of this? The counselor inquired. Was she working? Yes, she often worked strange shifts, and it wasn't unusual for her to be gone all night, working the graveyard shift. I see, the counselor replied. Go on. I took a big breath before proceeding. After about a month, he entered my room as Laura was taking a shower. I was so ashamed that I couldn't finish my statement. Did he abuse you? The counselor inquired. I nodded as I wiped the tears from my face. Yes, I said gently. How often did this happen? The counselor inquired. I'm not sure, maybe a couple of times every week for about 4 months. He even said he was going to invite some of his friends over to have fun with me. Did your wife know this was going on? The counselor inquired. I shrugged my shoulders. I do not know. She was never present when it happened. She'd always come by later and say how great it was to have people like Greg to look after me. I'll never forget the day he hauled in that blasted monitor and installed it on my dresser. He linked it up to a camera and made me watch while he screwed my wife. Laura thought it was great that he brought it in. When did the abuse stop? The counselor inquired. The day Dr. Victor stopped over to see me. I remember that day like it was yesterday. Laura invited Dr. Victor and my attorney into my room, just a few hours after Greg had abused me. Dr. Victor was an older, slightly shorter, balding man with a German accent. I reflected on the visit. "Ethan, there's a Dr. Victor here to see you," Laura remarked as she led him into my room. Dr. Victor approached and introduced himself to me. He also introduced an assistant with a tablet. My lawyer, Jacob Harrison, was also present. "Ethan, I'm Dr. Franklin Victor, and I'm here to discuss a possible treatment for your condition." He looked at Laura before proceeding. "I'll take care of it from here, Missy," he explained. "Please wait in the other room." She exited the room, but I noticed a concerned expression on her face. He returned my gaze, pulled up a chair and sat down, looked me in the eyes before responding. "Now, Ethan, allow me to explain. I manage a high-end research facility on Lake Arrowhead. We've been conducting revolutionary research on 3D bone restoration and nerve healing implants. I believe your situation is tailor-made for us. I glanced at your record, and I know how much damage you've sustained," he said. "I believe we can help you regain the most, if not all, of your physical ability. Is this something you might be interested in? Please blink once to confirm and twice to deny." What else could I say about something like this? Of course, I did blink once. "Good," he replied with a smile. "Now, you must understand that this is all experimental, but we have received approval for human testing. Thanks to external grants, it will cost you nothing." That was fantastic news, but I was apprehensive about the experimentation. "I know you're probably concerned about this being experimental," he continued as if he could read my mind. "Don't be concerned about that. Even if the operation fails, you will not be any worse off than you are today. But I feel you are a good candidate, and I'm confident that everything will be all right. In fact, if we're as successful as I expect, you'll be stronger than you were before the accident." That gave me hope, so I listened as he described the operation. Essentially, he said that all of the damaged vertebrae would be replaced with vertebrae composed of a composite material that was stronger than the originals. In addition, the new vertebrae would be created using a 3D printer and data from my own body. In principle, the new bones would be perfect replicas of the old ones, albeit stronger. In addition, he would put tiny electrical implants to assist mend the injured nerves. The operation would take 3 to 4 hours, and the recuperation period could be several days, depending on how quickly I healed. Dr. Victor also stated that he had already evaluated the data from my stay and began the process of manufacturing the new bones. "I hope you don't mind," he remarked. "Initially, we wanted to explore if we could recreate the injured bone using data from your records. We chose to proceed with the surgery after determining that we could. When I was strong enough, he indicated I could start physical therapy, which may last a few weeks." "So is this something you would like to try?" the man inquired. "Blink once for yes or twice for no." Of course, I did blink once. He smiled as he rubbed his hands together. "Very good," he declared. He motioned his helper to join us. "Please let Mr. John read the agreement." The assistant came over and held the tablet as I read the agreement. When I was finished, Dr. Victor asked whether I agreed again, ordering me to blink once to indicate yes. I blinked once. "Very well," he remarked, asking his aide to have me electronically sign using my thumbprint. Once that was completed, Jacob countersigned to confirm that he had witnessed my approval to the operation. "Are you ready to get started?" he inquired. Of course, I did blink once. He smiled. "Let's get going. Greg, we have everything you'll need at our facilities." He directed to his aide to take me out of the apartment and into a huge van waiting in the parking area. Laura stopped us on our way out. "Where are you going?" she inquired. Dr. Victor stared at her before responding, "Your husband has agreed to a procedure that could help him get back on his feet." "Where are you taking him?" she inquired. "How long will he be gone? How much will this cost?" "We are transporting him to my facility on Lake Arrowhead," the doctor stated. "He may be gone for several weeks, depending on how well he responds to the treatment and rehabilitation. His doctor and lawyer are well aware of what is going on, and they have given their approval, as has your spouse. Cost is not a concern. Now, if you don't mind, let's get started." "Wait, I haven't seen any agreement and I don't even know what's going to happen." "He doesn't need your approval, Mrs. John," Jacob said. "He is crippled, not incompetent. Everything was explained to him, and he gave his permission. You want your husband to get healthy, right?" "Yes, of course I do," she replied. I could sense a hint of shame in her voice. "Can I at least come see him?" "Perhaps after the procedure, when he's up to having visitors, you can come," the doctor suggested. "Otherwise, You should probably stay right here for now. We will be in touch. Perhaps now is a good moment to say farewell and wish your husband well. Laura moved in front of me and kissed me on the lips. Get well, honey. Let me know when I can come to see you, okay? Of course, I couldn't say anything, but I felt hot inside. Dr. Victor and his aide rolled me out to the van. Once I was inside, the helper took the wheel and we were on our way. I could see Laura standing in the parking lot, watching us depart. I had no idea what she was thinking, but I felt like I'd just been freed from a hostage situation. A few hours later, we arrived at the facility and I was led into a very lovely room where many nurses began prepping me for the treatment. I hope you don't mind, Ethan, but I thought it best to get started right away. Victor, your doctor remarked. He turned to face the nurses. Once you have him prepared, please bring him to the operating room. Yes, Dr. Victor, one of the nurses replied. Okay, Ethan, I will leave you in the capable hands of your nurses, and I'll see you in the OR, he said before leaving. Soon, they had me undressed, bathed and dressed in a robe that revealed my back. They put me on a stretcher and transported me to the operating room, where 3 extremely large orderlies carefully scooped me up and laid me face down on the table. The anesthesiologist performed his duties, and the last thing I heard before leaving was Dr. Victor saying, "Oh my." I had no idea what he was referring to. I awoke still face down, but this time I was in some sort of device that kept me immobilized. I had a tube down my mouth and an IV implanted into my arm. My right arm was fitted with a blood pressure bracelet. Suddenly, the device rotated and I found myself looking up at Dr. Victor. You're awake, he stated. Good. You'll be pleased to hear that the operation went smoothly. We'll have to keep you motionless for a few days to ensure proper healing. After all, we had to do a lot of replacing. You may have tingling or itching in your back. This is normal. That means the implants are performing their function. Both the nurses and I will keep a careful eye on you. Don't be scared. The apparatus you're in will rotate your body periodically. Just try to relax for now, okay? We'll talk in a few days. After that, he checked my vital signs, gave the nurses some instructions, and left. Relax, what else was I going to do? He was correct about one thing. I did feel a tingling feeling in the middle of my back, which irritated me to no end. I also felt itchy and wanted to scratch, but I couldn't. As unpleasant as it was refreshing to feel something for the first time in almost a year. That night, 2 nurses came in to wash me down. I could feel them washing my legs, buttocks, and back. I was more than startled, I was shocked. I could really feel what they were doing. They rolled over the bed and started washing me from the front. That's when I caught a good look at them. They were both very young and gorgeous. One had shoulder-length blonde hair, while the other was brunette. As they bathed me, I felt something different. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. I couldn't move my head, but I noticed a smile on their faces as they observed me. The blonde gazed at me. Well, I'm no doctor, but it looks like something is working down here, she added with a smile. They giggled slightly but continued to do their work. They finished what they were doing and departed the room, but not before offering me some encouragement. I ended up being in the device for 4 days. The days were pretty much the same. Every morning, I had x-rays done, and nurses would massage my arms and legs. Later in the day, I received a thorough sponge bath. As the days passed, I became more aware of what was happening to me. On the 4th day, Dr. Victor came into my room and examined me attentively. He sat down next to me, pulled out a pin, and immediately inserted it in my calf. I felt something and made a noise. I couldn't say anything because I still had a tube in my throat. He stared at me. Did you feel that? He inquired. I blinked once and attempted to nod my head, but I couldn't because it was still strapped down. He smiled. Very good. He asked me to try moving my toes. I was surprised to learn that I could. Then he instructed me to move my fingers, and I did. Outstanding, he said. He checked my x-rays thoroughly and summoned some nurses. I think it's time we got Mr. John out of this contraption. They took the tube out of my throat, removed my catheter, reconnected all of the tubes, and released me from the device. Then they carried me to a gurney and took me to my room, where they put me in a bed. Dr. Victor spoke with the nurses before sitting down next to me. I can't tell you how pleased I am with your results, he told me. We will need to start your physical therapy right away, and we will begin with some exercises you may do in your bed. I don't want to put too much pressure on your back right now. He inserted a cup with a straw into my mouth. Take a drink. I did, and it felt great going down my throat. Try to say something, he advised when I finished swallowing. Wow, I muttered. He laughed and nodded his head. That will do, he said. How do you feel? Like a new man, I replied, my voice still feeble. I could feel my eyes beginning to water. This was the first time I'd been able to do or say anything since my accident. He grabbed a tissue and wiped my eyes. I understand this is an extremely emotional moment for you, Ethan. For now, I want you to relax. Don't overdo it. Your back still has to heal, but the implants appear to be operating properly. I'm concerned that you've lost some muscle mass since the accident, so we'll set you up with a diet and exercise plan to assist you regain muscle function. Now I'd like to present you to the staff members who will be looking after you. He waved his hand and several young women entered the room. I'm Emily, your nutritionist. Now will be your physical therapist, he explained, indicating to a short-haired muscular blonde who nodded once. Rachel will be your day nurse, he announced, pointing to a tiny woman with short brown hair. And this is Megan, your night nurse, he explained, gesturing to a taller, red-haired woman. Her eyes twinkled as she smiled at me. Nice to meet you, I said. Now, if there is anything you need, please feel free to let us know, the doctor remarked. We all live here at the facility, so we're available 24 hours a day. He motioned for the women to leave the room briefly before returning to me. Ethan, I need to talk to you about something. This is a difficult subject, so please let me know if you feel uncomfortable. I'm curious, I stated. I detected a good degree of rectal damage when we began the surgery on you. I also collected samples of what I found in that region. I'm not here to condemn, but I was wondering. No, I murmured, feeling ashamed. I see, he replied. So you were abused? Tears started to pour down my cheeks. Yes, I was able to get out. He cleaned my face before speaking. You are aware that I have an obligation to disclose this to the authorities. In this state, abusing a disabled person is a felony, as well as a hate crime. I collected samples of what I discovered, and the lab is conducting an analysis that includes DNA. Do you know who did this to you? Yes, I said gently. Was your wife involved? He inquired. I do not know. She was never present when he did it. I see, he replied. Are you willing to name the person who did this to you? I nodded my head. Yes, I informed him. Good, I will call the authorities once we have completed the analysis. In the interim, I'll connect you with a counselor. Thanks. You are welcome. Now, shall we focus on getting you back on your feet? They fitted a contraption to the head of my enormous bed that allowed me to lift weights while lying down, but Dr. Victor didn't want me to use it right away. For the first week, they simply had me do hand exercises and brought in a machine to perform leg workouts. Na proved to be quite the therapist. As she yelled for cadence, I pushed with one foot and then the other. I spy drivey, she retorted in German, and I strained to keep up. I couldn't help but notice her accent was much stronger than Dr. Victor's. She would have made an excellent drill coach, I thought, as she urged me to move faster. Gut, she exclaimed. We'll feed you some protein to get your muscles back in condition. Every Fräulein in town will be after you, and probably a frustrated Hausfrau or two, she said with a wicked giggle. This gets us to the present. She set down her pen and looked at the counselor, who had carefully listened to my narrative. Ethan, the next few weeks will be very challenging for you. Frankly, I'm not sure which will be more difficult, the physical or mental recuperation. I'm delighted you feel comfortable talking to me about this, and I hope you take action against the people who harmed you. They breached the law and must be dealt with. I want you to know that I'm here for you, and you may contact me at any time. Okay? Okay, thanks. With that, the session was over, and I was taken back to my room. A few of the days later, Dr. Victor entered my room, leading a couple of men in dark suits. I realized Jacob was with them. After chasing the nurses out of my room, the doctor sat down beside me. Ethan, these men are here to talk about your circumstances at home. I also called your lawyer. I hope you do not mind. Not at all, I replied. Jacob appeared stunned when he heard me say, You're looking much better, Ethan, he murmured, standing over me. I grinned as I reached out to shake his hand. Surprised, he agreed and shook my hand. Thank you, I am feeling a lot better. I can now eat on my own. He is doing quite well, Dr. Victor added. If all goes well, he'll be even stronger than he was before the accident. That's good to hear, Jacob responded. Ethan, this is Agent Cole and Agent Davis from the state police. They are come to take your statement. Are you ready to speak with them? Absolutely. The three guys took up chairs, and Agent Cole produced a recorder. Mr. John, I hope you don't mind if we record this interview, he said. Not at all, I replied. They spent the next hour taking notes and asking questions as I described the past 4 months of abuse at the hands of someone I believed was a friend. This was the third time I had to admit what had happened to me, and it was equally humiliating and agonizing. "And you say this Mr. Wallace is the man who assaulted you repeatedly?" Agent Cole inquired. "Yes," I answered. "I have the sample I took from Mr. John, along with the analysis," Dr. Victor stated. "There was considerable rectal injury that needed to be addressed. That's all in my report." Agent Cole stated, "We'll need to take that into evidence." Dr. Victor nodded his head. "Tell me, Mr. John," Agent Cole asked, glancing back at me, "is this the same Greg Wallace who works at McMaster and Williams law firm?" "Yes, it is," I answered. "And your wife works at this firm as well?" "Yes, she does," I informed him. "And you allege that the two of them have been engaged in an affair during this time?" he inquired. "That's correct," I replied. "Was she ever present when the assaults took place?" Agent Cole inquired. I shake my head. "She was at the apartment, but we never shared a room, as far as I recall. Indeed, she appeared to believe that he was assisting me in some way." "I see," the agent replied. "Nevertheless, we'll have to bring her in as an accessory. Even if she wasn't physically in the same room, it's hard to believe she didn't notice anything was wrong." "Ethan, are you certain about all of this?" Jacob inquired, surprised. "I know Greg personally, and I find it hard to believe he would do something like this." "Maybe you don't know him as well as you think," I remarked rhetorically. "You have Dr. Victor's report, and you have the sample." "I can't explain it," Jacob replied. "I take it you're going to want a divorce from your wife." "Absolutely," I said, nodding. "Okay, I'll start the paperwork. I'll contact you before we file." "I also want a restraining order," I informed him. "I don't want either of them anywhere near me, and I sure as heck don't want them in my apartment." "As of right now, we'll be treating your apartment as a potential crime scene," Agent Cole informed us. "How much longer is Mr. John going to be here?" he inquired. "Hard to say," the doctor replied. "At least 5 more weeks, possibly longer. It depends on how well he reacts to the treatment and therapy." "Very well," Cole replied. "At least he'll be safe for a while longer." He turned to face his buddy. "Get a search warrant for the John apartment and arrest warrants for Mrs. John and Mr. Wallace." The other agent nodded and left the room. Cole turned around to face me. "Just so you know, Mr. John," Cole explained, "we're going to charge your wife as an accessory. If it comes down to it, are you willing to testify against her in court?" "Yes," I said. "Okay," he replied quietly. Davis had returned and gave a thumbs up. "The warrant will be ready when we get back to the office." Cole nodded and packed his gear, including the sample he received from Dr. Victor. "We'll be in touch, Mr. John," he added. "I hope everything works out for you." "Thank you," I replied. After they went, Jacob approached me. "Ethan, you are making serious charges. Greg might lose everything, his job, his license, and possibly even his wife. Are you very convinced about this?" "I'm 100% confident, Jacob. I honestly do not care if he loses everything. In fact, given what he has done, he deserves to lose everything. I hope you are on my side in this." "Tell me right now if you aren't, and I'll get another lawyer." "I am on your side, Ethan. It's only, I don't know. It's difficult for me to believe. I met his wife and ate in their home. I've never seen anything to indicate he'd do something so dumb." "Well, he did," I explained. "Can I sue him as well?" "I don't see any reason why not," Jacob responded. "We reside in one of the few states where alienation of affection cases are permitted, so I will investigate that as well. However, you should be aware that they rarely travel far. I genuinely apologize for this, Ethan. I had no idea. It is not your fault. I had no means to let anyone know." We exchanged goodbyes, and he went. I felt slightly better knowing that something was going to be done. The next few weeks passed fast. Na had me standing up in no time. At first, she made me walk on a treadmill. Then she made me work with weights. Emily put me on a high protein and fiber diet, and I started to observe my muscle mass returning to normal. Meanwhile, the authorities were preparing a case against Greg and Laura. Jacob believed it was prudent to keep the divorce papers until she was arrested. Agent Cole and Davis returned several times with state prosecutors, seeking more comprehensive information from me about the assaults. They informed me that the analysis confirmed that Dr. Victor had retrieved Greg's DNA from me. Jacob also hired a private investigator to acquire evidence of their adultery. It wasn't tough because the two of them were very open about their romance. Greg's wife, C, appeared to be unaware of their actions, as she worked nights when they messed around and slept during the day when they were at work. After gathering proof and completing the paperwork, Jacob came out to review it with me. He intended to sue for divorce on grounds of adultery, neglect, and cruelty. He had lots of images, videos, and audio evidence to back up his claim. I didn't want to hear or see what they had done, especially because I'd seen and heard enough about them to last a lifetime. He also had papers against Greg and intended to sue the firm they worked for because Laura was technically his subordinate and Greg had plainly broken company policy. Furthermore, he intended to denounce Greg to the state bar organization and had papers prepared accusing him of multiple ethics violations. I couldn't help but notice that Laura never phoned the facility or came out to see how I was doing. Apparently, she and Greg were too busy screwing about to notice me. Oh well, I figured, this too would pass. And it did. After 2 months, the authorities raided the firm and detained them. Jacob's process server was also present, delivering the paperwork to all parties involved. My lawyer even contacted the media, which obtained footage of the 2 cheaters being placed in the back of police cruisers. Shocked by the charges and evidence we had against Greg, the business acted fast and settled with Jacob for the majority of what we requested. They also fired both of them and reported Greg to the state bar. CE learned of the arrest that day when Greg called her from the county prison, telling her he was in jail and needed her to be in court for his arraignment so she could post bail. Agent Colin Davis met with Dr. Victor, and the 3 of them took me to the courthouse for my arraignment. CA noticed me as I was brought in for the hearing and ran up to me. "How is he?" she questioned Dr. Victor. I looked up to her. "Better," I replied, seeing her expression. It had been a year since she last heard me talk. "Haven't you heard? Your husband has abused me on several occasions during the last 4 months. At the same time, he has been banging Laura." "You did not know?" "Oh my God," she exclaimed. "I did not know, Ethan. Please believe me, I had no idea what was happening. I've also filed for divorce from Laura and am suing Greg for alienation of affection. If you like, I may offer you my attorney's name in case you decide to file for divorce." "Damn right. I'm divorcing the son of a," she explained. We entered the courthouse and saw the sheriffs bring Greg and Laura in, both dressed in orange jumpsuits, with their wrists and feet shackled and joined to another chain around their waists. They both looked terrible. The state prosecutor requested that both be remanded without bail, citing Greg's potential flight risk and a restraining order against Laura. He also informed the judge that I was going through medical treatment and had filed for divorce. The prosecutor expressed anxiety that Greg would physically retaliate against me. The judge reviewed the documentation in front of him and agreed, ordering them both imprisoned without bail until the hearing, which he scheduled for the following week. As they took Greg and Laura out, she noticed me seated in the back of the courtroom. Her eyes widened as I raised one hand, middle finger out. C caught up to me after Agent Colin Davis rolled me out of court. She halted them and knelt down to speak with me. "Ethan, I'm really sorry about everything. I honestly didn't know." "That's all right, C," I said. "How long are you going to be gone?" she inquired. I shrugged my shoulders. "I don't know," I replied. "Perhaps a couple more weeks. They actually did a great job. I can even walk around now." "That's great. Please stay in touch and let me know how you're doing," CA said. "I will, C," I said. "We really need to go now, miss," Agent Cole stated. CA nodded and stepped up. "I understand. Take care of yourself, Ethan," she said. "Thanks, C," I replied as Agent Cole wheeled me to the van. When we returned to the facility, I was escorted to the physical therapy room, where Na was waiting for me. "About time you showed up," she remarked. "Time to begin." She pushed me through my paces and even gave me extra workouts to compensate for being late. I was sore when she finished with me, but I felt amazing. Megan stayed after dinner to check my vitals and complete her papers. When she was finished, she approached the bed, made sure I was comfortable, sat down, and looked at me for a few moments. Something appeared to be bothering her. "Is everything okay?" I remarked. "You seem to be thinking about something." "I was just wondering about something," she explained. "What?" "Do you find me attractive?" she inquired. "Absolutely. I think you're a wonderful girl and an excellent nurse." "Why?" "It's just, you haven't made a pass at me the entire time you've been here. I was wondering if I had done anything to anger you or if you didn't think me attractive." I smiled at her before replying. "I'm actually very attracted to you. I told you. It's simply that, for one thing, I'm still married, and secondly, I'm relearning how to move around. I haven't been able to speak for a year. Besides, how about your other patients?" You're my only patient, she explained quietly. Dr. Victor is very particular about who he assigns to the night shift. I see. So, in addition to being a medical genius and a miracle worker, Dr. Victor is also a matchmaker. She laughed at that. It has happened before, she added. Well, Megan, I tend to have a soft spot for shy, attractive redheads. And I'm getting divorced, so there's that. She grinned broadly and her eyes twinkled. Would it be okay if I kissed you goodnight? She inquired. Definitely, I said. She leaned in and softly kissed me. After a second, the delicate kiss evolved into something more sensual, with our tongues battling in one another's lips. When she broke the kiss, I felt something. I am here for you all night, every night. If you ever need anything, call me, okay? I know you're not ready to make love, but I'd love to just spend time with you, Megan murmured quietly. I will, I promise, I replied. She smiled and softly exited the room. I fell asleep thinking about what she said, with images of red-headed angels dancing through my mind all night. The next several days sped by, with Na working me even harder. I discovered that I could walk many miles on the treadmill, and my muscles had improved to the point where I could bench press more weight than ever before. The daily x-rays revealed that my replacement vertebrae were performing even better than Dr. Victor had projected, with the implants repairing nearly all of the damaged nerves. Megan kept me company most evenings by lying on the bed with me and watching television, or simply talking. We would frequently share a bowl of popcorn while watching a movie and snuggle up together, the bowl on our laps. We always finished the evening with a goodnight kiss. I began to feel like a high school boy on a date with the most attractive girl in school. On top of that, I was falling hard for her. By the time Agent Cole and Davis arrived to pick me up for the main portion of Laura and Greg's trial, I no longer required the wheelchair, but Dr. Victor insisted that I use it nevertheless to ensure that I did not injure myself. He accompanied me as well, not only as a witness to my injuries, but also to ensure that I returned home safely. I sat in my chair directly behind the prosecutor, with Dr. Victor beside me. Laura and Greg entered the room and sat down next to their defense counsel. They looked over at me before whispering to their attorney. CA sat behind them, but she didn't seem happy. The jury, which had been chosen the day before, was seated, and the judge entered with the bailiff, issuing the order for everyone to stand. Using the rail in front of me for support, I rose up and noted Greg and Laura's shocked expressions. When the judge entered, he gave the order to sit and we all sat down. Dr. Victor calmly inquired if I was all right, and I nodded yes. The judge began the hearings by reading the lengthy list of allegations, noting that Greg and Laura had both pleaded not guilty. After both sides had finished their opening comments, the court went to the prosecution attorney, who called me as his first witness. Dr. Victor walked beside me to ensure I didn't collapse and then returned to his seat. Greg and Laura exchanged stunned looks as I sat in the witness chair. They were even more surprised when I talked after the bailiff had sworn me in to tell the truth. The prosecutor got up and walked up to me. He started by complimenting me on my improvement, then asked questions about my accident and the year I spent as a quadriplegic. I realized what he was doing. By asking these questions, he was informing the jury about my physical state before I was treated at Dr. Victor's facility. The majority of the inquiries at this point were on my home life. How Laura tried but was unable to care for me, and how she was able to arrange for home health care experts to care for me during the day. And during any of this time, did your wife ever attempt to see to your emotional needs? The prosecuting attorney questioned. No, sir, I said. Did she ever attempt to please you in any way? He asked her. No, she did not, I replied. Had she tried, would she have been successful? Wondered the man. I shake my head. No, I had no feeling from the neck down. I see, he replied. Did she ever hug you or kiss you or spend time with you, maybe reading a book or watching television? I considered my response carefully, but I couldn't recall her doing anything similar. She sometimes gave me a peck on the cheek, but that was about it, I replied. Did she participate in your care? He inquired. Did she feed you, help bathe you, perhaps help you in the bathroom? She tried at first, but she simply wasn't up to it. When did Mr. Wallace come into the picture? Almost from the beginning, I said. Were you friends before your accident? The prosecutor inquired. Yes, we were. They lived next door to us and we had spent time together before to my injury. I see. So you weren't surprised to see him in your apartment? No, I thought we were friendly. They frequently came over, and we would occasionally enjoy a beverage or dinner. You say he and your wife engaged in inappropriate activity in your apartment, the prosecution continued. When did that start? I'm not sure exactly. They could have been doing it while I was in the hospital, but I'm not sure, I have no confirmation of that. He frequently let her cry on his shoulder while they were both present. I believe it was approximately a month after I returned home from the hospital that I first heard them. Heard them? The prosecutor inquired. Yes. I could hear them kissing and moaning like they were making out. Laura wiped her eyes as I recounted what I had heard. Then I heard them in what used to be our bed, being intimate. What happened then? The prosecutor inquired. He would enter my room and harass me when she was showering. One day, he brought in a monitor in a box and said that it was so I could see a real man with my wife. Laura and the jurors let out a collective gasp. Your Honor, the prosecutor remarked as the bailiff brought out a trolley containing a large monitor and a black box into the courtroom. This is the monitor and box Mr. John is talking about. The box is a digital video recorder. The system also includes 2 video cameras, one in Mr. John's master bedroom and the other in his lodging room. We copied several hours of video footage captured by the device. The prosecutor turned back to face me. Is it your testimony that Mr. Wallace used this so you could watch him being intimate with your wife? He was asking. Yes, I said gently. Laura looked at Greg, astonished. You liar, she exclaimed. The judge hammered the gavel. Order in the court, he declared. Laura calmed down, and the prosecutor resumed. Did you know that Mr. Wallace placed a camera in your room as well as the master bedroom? My friend asked me. I shake my head. This was new to me. No sir, I didn't. How did your wife react to this monitor? The prosecution inquired. She thought it was great that he got it for me. Apparently, she assumed it was so I could watch sports on TV. And was it about this time that the abuse against you began? The prosecutor inquired. Yes, it was, I answered. Please tell the court what would typically happen, the prosecution asked. After Greg and my wife had their fun, he would come into my room, turn the monitor off, then lift me up and abuse me. Is it in your testimony that he abused you? The prosecutor inquired. Yes, I said, embarrassed. Was your wife ever present when this occurred? The prosecutor inquired. Not that I'm aware of. He always appeared to finish around the time she was done showering. Afterward, Mom would come into my room and tell me how great it was to have a friend like Greg to look after me. How often did this happen? About 2 or 3 times a week, I answered. For how long? The prosecutor inquired. About 4 months. I heard members of the jury gasp, and when I looked around, I noticed several of them staring at Laura and Greg with venom in their eyes. Laura looked down at the table, while Greg sat stoically, staring straight ahead. So you estimate that this happened about 35 times overall? The prosecutor inquired. About that, yes, I replied. Were you aware that Mr. Wallace recorded his time in your room? My friend asked me. I shake my head. No, I wasn't. The prosecutor looked at the jurors. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Wallace recorded himself abusing Mr. John 36 times on this device, he told them. He paused while the jurors took it in. With friends like that, who needs enemies? The prosecutor remarked rhetorically. The defense attorney objected, and the judge upheld his objection. That's all I have for this witness at this time, the prosecution stated. But I reserve the right to recall Mr. John to the stand. Very well, the judge replied. Your witness, Mr. Bradley, he informed the defense attorney. Brad Bradley remained at his table, looking up at me before speaking. Mr. John, I am sorry to hear of your injuries, and I do hope you get better. Thank you, I replied. Just one thing, he added. At any time, did you ever indicate to Mr. Wallace that you did not approve of his alleged actions? I was unable to. I was totally crippled at the time, and I couldn't even speak. So the answer is no then? He asked. That's because I couldn't, I explained, growing agitated. You also failed to alert anyone about what transpired, including your wife. Isn't that correct? He questioned. Now I was upset. That's because I was completely disabled and couldn't, I roared and slammed my fist on the thick wood rail in front of me. For a moment, no one said or did anything. When I drew my hand away, I noticed that I had cracked the rail. I didn't realize I'd hit it so hard. I looked at the judge before speaking. I apologize, Your Honor. I lost my temper. Don't do it again, he told me. I nodded my head. That's all I have for this witness, Bradley added. The judge told me I may leave the stand, and Dr. Victor came to accompany me back to my seat. The prosecutor then summoned Dr. Victor to the stand. He informed the court of my injuries and the extent of my incapacity. He also said that he discovered severe damage, collected samples for evidence and testing, and then did everything he could to repair the harm. He also discussed the procedure he had conducted and my progress since then. And in your professional opinion, the only way for this damage to have been done is for Mr. John to have been abused. Is that right? The prosecutor inquired. Correct, Dr. Victor said. That would also explain the presence of evidence. Thank you, the prosecutor responded. He turned to face the jurors. Ladies and gentlemen, the state tested the sample. Further tests and DNA analysis have proven with 99.99% certainty that it belongs to the defendant, Greg Wallace. He turned to face the judge. That is all I have for this witness, Your Honor. Your witness, Mr. Bradley, the court stated. Thank you. Dr. Victor, you run the Arrowhead Institute of Advanced Medical Research, correct? Yes, that is correct, Dr. Victor replied. You engage in some pretty cutting-edge research there, do you not? Bradley asked. Sure, Dr. Victor replied, slipping into his native German as he occasionally did. Bradley took out a piece of paper and started reading. Each of us has different protection mechanisms that assist us deal with harsh events. Sometimes we revert to an alternate version of ourselves, which could be regarded as an alter ego. The alter ego could present itself in a variety of ways. An otherwise calm, unassuming person may suddenly become noisy, arrogant, and domineering, for example. Those who are unfamiliar with that person's behavior will have a very different opinion of him or her, he read before returning his gaze to Dr. Victor. You also talk of an inner beast that is dormant within every one of us. According to your writings, you claim to have discovered a means to unleash the so-called beast to assist with a certain scenario. Is that correct? He questioned. I did write that, and yes, my research has found that to be the case, replied the doctor. Isn't it true that you once worked with Mr. Bill Dalton to help him discover his purported inner beast? Bradley explained that simply saying yes or no would suffice. I worked with Mr. Dalton, yes, Dr. Victor said. The exact nature of my work, however, is a matter of doctor-patient confidentiality. Is it not true that toward the end of his treatment Mr. Dalton's house mysteriously blew up? Bradley asked. The prosecutor quickly protested. Irrelevant, Your Honor. Your Honor, Bradley explained, we all saw Mr. John's reaction. If you'll allow me, I believe there is a connection. I'll allow it for the time being, Mr. Bradley, the judge remarked. But I would appreciate it if you could make your point and move on. I will, Your Honor. Thank you, Bradley replied. He turned back to Dr. Victor. Are you aware of what happened to Mr. Dalton's home? Bradley asked. I remember seeing something about it on the news, Dr. Victor remarked. I also recall the police claiming that Mrs. Dalton and her live-in partner were manufacturing medicines with highly volatile materials. I don't see any relation to this situation. According to police reports, Mrs. Dalton was seen running out of the house screaming about a monster, Bradley recalled. Apparently a result of the drugs she and her lover were manufacturing, remarked Victor's doctor. Your Honor, this is absolutely irrelevant to the case before the court today, as Mr. Bradley is fully aware. I insist that this line of questioning be stopped, the prosecutor stated. I tend to agree. Mr. Bradley, I've been more than fair. Please move on. Very well, Your Honor. I have no further questions for this witness, Bradley stated. The judge dismissed Dr. Victor, and the case continued. The prosecutor summoned state agents, who searched my residence. Both claimed they discovered what looked to be proof of abuse. Then he called home healthcare nurses, who testified that they saw symptoms of physical abuse. They documented it in their records, but the home care facility never followed up, thus the reports fell through the bureaucratic cracks. I have one last piece of evidence, Your Honor, the prosecutor stated. With your permission, I would like to play a portion of video taken of the abuse against Mr. John. Very well, the judge replied. The prosecutor looked at the jurors. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to show you is shocking, he told them. I take no joy in this, but I believe it's necessary that you see for yourselves what Mr. John had to endure for months on end. He switched on the monitor and started playing the footage. The jury frowned as they saw Greg clearly abuse me. The prosecutor paused the video and enlarged the image. Ladies and gentlemen, let there be no doubt in your mind who is committing this heinous act to a man who once thought of him as a friend, he told the audience. After the jurors looked at the image for a few moments, tears streamed down my cheeks from shame. Again, the prosecutor paused the video. He stared at the stunned jurors. I rest my case, he stated with distaste. Mr. Bradley, you may present your case, the judge instructed once the prosecutor sat down. Bradley stood up and summoned Laura to the stand. Mrs. John, he asked, is it true that you had an affair with Mr. Wallace? Yes, it is, she replied calmly. Can you tell us why? He inquired. My husband, Ethan, was injured so badly, and I felt lost and hopeless, she told me. He was there when I needed someone to weep on. Yes, we had an affair, but it was nothing more. Were you aware of what Mr. Wallace did to your husband? Bradley asked. No, I wasn't. If you had known, would you have done anything to stop him? Bradley asked. Yes, I would have. Thank you, Mrs. John. That's it for now. Your witness, Mr. Foster, he remarked while sitting down. The prosecutor stood up and approached the monitor. He selected an image from the video that clearly showed both my face and Laura in the same frame. Mrs. John, he started, you testified that you were unaware your husband was being abused. Is this correct? Yes. Look at his face in that video, the prosecutor added. The hurt and humiliation were clear to everybody who saw it. Do you expect this court to think that you could look at your husband of 3 years in that state and not notice something was wrong? It didn't cross my mind at the time, she told me. Before Mrs. Wallace brought healthcare workers into the home, did you ever once feed or clean your husband? The defense attorney said. I tried, but I wasn't very good at it, she stated. What happens afterward? Did you even try to help? No, she replied gently. And why was that? The prosecutor inquired. I do not know. I felt Greg was helping him, and I had no idea what to do. The truth is, you basically abandoned him, didn't you? Bradley responded to the prosecutor's query with an objection. I withdraw the question, Foster promptly said. You said your affair with Mr. Wallace was purely physical, correct? That's right, she replied. And you claimed in your testimony that you still love your husband, right? Yes, she answered. Foster returned to his table, pulling out an audio recorder and a document from his briefcase. He walked back to the bench. Your Honor, this is a written report done by Samuel Jenkins, a private investigator hired by Mr. John's attorney, he stated, presenting the paper to the judge. A copy of this report and the audio were provided to Mr. Bradley, as evidenced by the accompanying affidavit. The report refers to an audio recording of a conversation between the defendants while out on a dinner date shortly after Mr. John was admitted to Arrowhead. With your permission, I'd like to play the audio for the jury. Very well, the judge replied. Foster activated the recording button, and Laura and Greg's chat could be heard in court. So have you given any thought to what we discussed? Greg's voice is heard on the recording. I have, and I admit I'm intrigued, Laura replied. Well, what do you think? I must admit, the last few months with you have been fantastic, she remarked in the recording. Much better than my life with Ethan has ever been. Are you sure we can pull this off? Of course, Greg replied. I'm a lawyer, you know. I can have a judge do whatever I want. It would be easy to declare Ethan a state ward. He can't care for himself, and you're clearly not trained to do so. Frankly, I can't stomach the idea of it, she told me. I mean, feeding him like a baby, wiping his drool, changing his diaper and cleaning his buttocks. Yuck. It makes me nauseous just to think about it. I need a man, a whole man, a genuine man like you. You and I both know this Victor guy won't be able to do anything for him, Greg told him. Every doctor stated he'd be an invalid for the rest of his life. Once he is judged incompetent, we may seize his massive settlement and live like kings in Costa Rica or somewhere else. Wouldn't that be preferable to staying here and wiping the excrement off little Timmy? Yeah, it would, she answered. What about C though? Laura asked. Things haven't been great between us for a long time, Greg told me. She wants children, but I don't, and I'm tired of her continual pestering. I just want to be sure you won't go soft on me and tell me you still love him when we start dating. That will not happen. I love only you. The prosecutor paused the recording and looked at Laura. I felt like my heart had been ripped out again. So you and your lover intended to declare your spouse incompetent so that you could take his settlement money and go to Costa Rica? So were you telling the truth to your sweetheart or in court? Which is it, Mrs. John? Please tell me now so that I can decide whether or not to prosecute you with perjury. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she was forced to openly confront her own deception. I don't know, she exclaimed. I still loved him, but I loved Greg too. She looked over at me. Please, Ethan, forgive me. I shook my head, turning away from her. Foster glanced at her with disgust. I'm done with this witness, he stated before walking away. The court excused her, and Bradley summoned Greg to the stand. So Mr. Wallace, Bradley said when Greg was sworn in, we've seen video of you and Mr. John. There is no denying what we all witnessed. I only have one question. Did Mr. John ever tell you that he didn't approve of your actions? Not once, Greg answered with a snarl. Thank you, Bradley replied, turning away. Your witness, he informed Foster, who was already on his feet. Mr. Wallace, he said, You graduated from Harvard Law School, did you not? Yes, I did, Greg announced happily. And you graduated near the top of your class, didn't you? I did. In fact, you're highly regarded as a top litigator in your firm, Foster told me. Bradley objected. Relevance, Your Honor? Your Honor, I intend to show that Mr. Wallace not only knows the law, but he knew that Mr. John could not possibly have given consent, Foster told you. Go ahead, Mr. Foster, the judge instructed. Thank you. He turned back to Greg. You knew that Mr. John was disabled, didn't you? Greg sighed and said nothing. Didn't you? Foster bellowed. Yes, I knew, Greg said. And you knew that the law in this state says persons with Mr. John's disabilities are incapable of giving consent, didn't you? Foster inquired. Yes, I guess so, Greg said. Foster glanced at him with hatred for a few moments before shaking his head. I'm finished with this witness, Foster replied, walking away. Any more witnesses, Mr. Bradley? The court inquired. Bradley shakes his head. No, Your Honor, I rest my case. Very well, we'll take 15 minutes and reconvene to hear closing arguments. The judge pounded his gavel and everyone exited the courtroom. Dr. Victor gave me a cup of water. How are you holding up? He inquired as I sipped my water. I'll be okay, I assured him. He patted my shoulder. Good. Foster looked to check how I was doing. I'm sorry you had to relive all of that, he said. I believe we have made an impression on the jurors. We will see. This is nearly over, Ethan. Remain patient. Thanks, I replied. Soon, the break was finished, and everyone returned to the courtroom. Greg, Laura, and Mr. Bradley appeared less assured than they had earlier in the day. CA looked angry enough to spit nails. This was the first time she'd heard much about it. When the judge returned, the bailiff directed everyone to stand. All right, Mr. Bradley, present your closing statement, the court said. Bradley stood forward to face the jury. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a difficult case for all of us. And contrary to popular belief, we hope Mr. John recovers. We have stipulated that the alleged abuse occurred with Mr. John. We're not debating that point, but this is a case about consent, or lack thereof. Mr. John confessed under oath that he never told my client that he did not provide approval. Mrs. John was unaware that anything was amiss, and she had no idea the alleged abuse had occurred. As a result, you are forced to conclude that my clients are not guilty. Thank you. He took a seat. The judge moved for Foster to make his final statements. On his way, Foster turned on the monitor, which displayed the image of Greg abusing me. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you for your participation today. I realize this has been really difficult for all of you. The defense has attempted to avoid the issue by stating that Mr. John never stated that he did not consent to what was being done to him. There's only one problem. Mr. John is crippled. He could not speak or defend himself. According to the law in this state, people with disabilities like his are unable to give or deny consent. Mr. Bradley is aware of this, as is the defendant, Greg Wallace, who is a Harvard Law School graduate. They have admitted to the activities against Mr. John. You've seen the video and heard the audio. You know the defendants plan to fraudulently declare Mr. John incapable in order to grab what was rightfully his and depart the country. Wallace took Mr. John's wife with the intention of taking Mr. John's money while leaving his own wife high and dry. You have heard the defendant's plan and scheme against Mr. John. The defense has not raised any doubts about what happened. The defendant Wallace abused Mr. John 36 times, and Mrs. John did nothing to stop it. In this state, abuse and willful neglect of a disabled person is considered a hate crime. That is why I am advocating for the highest punishment permitted by law. The state has done its part. Now I ask that you do yours and give Mr. John the justice he deserves. Thank you. After Foster had taken his seat, the judge issued his orders to the jury and sent them off to deliberate. He then ordered the rest of the court to recess. Dr. Victor and I entered the corridor, where Jacob waited. I just wanted to let you know that Laura signed the divorce papers, he told me. She isn't contesting anything. I just came back from filing them. The judge will sign off on them in a day or two, and you will be free in 6 months. Free? I asked cynically. Why don't I feel free then? You've been through a lot, young man, Dr. Victor explained. Trust me, it'll get better. I hope so. And I think I know just the person who can help you feel better, the doctor added with a knowing smile. You mean Megan? I inquired. Dr. Victor grinned and nodded. Ja, he answered. She really likes you, you know. It was my turn to smile. I like her too, a lot. Good, Dr. Victor replied. Just be careful though. I don't want you to have sex for at least another 6 to 8 weeks. I don't want you to put too much strain on your back just yet, he said with a smile. By the way, I said, what's up with that rail? How did I crack that thing? I barely slapped it. Must be the supplements we've been giving you, he said with a joke. That and Na's physical therapy. Nothing to do with that inner beast stuff, I said. He laughed. No, not at all. That's an entirely separate project. Besides, I would not recommend it for you, especially with the custom-built vertebrae we've installed. We talked for a little longer, and after about an hour, Foster poked his head into the corridor. Jury's back in already? I asked. He nodded his head. That was fast. Yeah, it was, Foster replied. Hopefully that's good news for us. We went through the motions again as everyone returned to the courtroom. The bailiff directed us all to stand as the judge entered, and we all took our seats. On his signal, the judge inquired, has the jury reached a decision? We have, the jury foreman said. The bailiff received the paperwork from the foreman and delivered it to the judge. After reading it to himself, he told Laura and Greg to stand up. Bradley stood with them. How do you find the charges against defendant Greg Wallace? The judge inquired. We find the defendant Greg Wallace guilty on all charges, the foreman stated. And on the charges against defendant Laura John, how do you find? We find the defendant Laura John not guilty on the charge of accessory to abuse of a disabled person, Your Honor, and guilty on all the other charges, said the deputy district attorney. The judge nodded his head. Very well, he responded, facing the defendants. He poured his rage on them. I've seen and heard a lot in this courtroom over the years, but nothing as awful and egregious as what I observed here today. The two of you make me sick to my stomach. You have not only mocked your marriages, but also the legal profession. That is why I am handing you the maximum penalty permitted by law. Mr. Wallace, as a well-trained lawyer and court official, your actions disgust me beyond words. At the prosecutor's request, I am sentencing you to at least 450 years of hard labor. That's 12 years for each of the 36 charges of maltreatment, plus an additional 20 years for committing a hate crime. I additionally added 8 years for conspiracy to conduct fraud. Mrs. John, I disagree with the jury's not guilty finding. Personally, I don't understand how anyone with more than 2 brain cells could be unaware that your husband was being abused. Nonetheless, I shall follow the verdict. I am, however, giving you the maximum punishment for criminal negligence and conspiracy to conduct fraud, which is 15 years in jail under state rules, making you available for parole in 10 years. He raised his gavel, but Bradley spoke to the judge. Your Honor, he replied, Mrs. John has just informed me that divorce papers have been filed, and she wishes to speak with Mr. John before being taken into custody. Is that acceptable with you, Mr. John? I can give her a couple of minutes, the judge explained. Your Honor, that's fine, I said. The judge nodded and remarked, very well. He slammed his gavel, declaring the court dismissed. Laura approached me as deputies prepared to take Greg away. You look good, she replied. Thank you, I replied. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry for everything. I honestly had no idea what he was doing to you. I would have done everything I could to stop it if I had known. I think you convinced the jury of that, I told them. I agree with the judge, however. I find it difficult to believe. You are not a foolish woman. At any rate, you'll have 15 years to consider it. Was there anything else? Yes, she responded. I wanted you to know I signed the divorce papers and I'm not going to fight you over it. That's what I heard, I informed her. Don't you want to know why it happened? She inquired. I shook my head. I really don't care, I told her. I'm sure it was all for greed and lust. You cheated me, plain and simple. The why really doesn't matter anymore. Do you think you could ever forgive me? She asked. Why is it all you cheating losers think you can come crawling and begging for forgiveness? I asked. You certainly didn't care about me when I needed you the most. To answer your question, no. I do not intend to ever forgive you. Instead, I'll do my best to forget you exist. Was there anything else? I know you won't believe me, but I do love you, she replied. I just wanted to tell you that before they take me to jail. You're correct, I don't believe you, but thank you for saying so. I suppose you should get moving. Those deputies don't seem happy over there. Okay. Goodbye, Ethan, she replied. She walked away with tears in her eyes. At that moment, I had absolutely no feelings for her. As I stood up, she approached me. How are you doing, Ethan? You look better now than you have in a long time. Thanks. I'm doing a lot better now, thanks to Dr. Victor. I just wanted to apologize for what my loser soon-to-be ex-husband did to you. I appreciate that, I told her. Did you get in touch with Jacob? Yes, I did. Greg's father insisted on a prenuptial agreement when we married, and it includes a very strict infidelity clause, so Jacob will have a field day with it. I'm glad to hear it, I said. If there's anything I can do to help, let me know. Thanks. I might need to borrow several copies of those videos from you. No problem, I responded. Whatever you need. I'll be gone a little longer, but I'm sure Jacob can make do with what he already has. One last thing, she added. I still have the key you gave me right after the accident. I'll clean up your apartment and remove Laura's belongings if you like. That would be a big help, see. Thanks. Not a problem. Good luck, and I'll see you soon, she said, kissing me on the cheek. We watched as she departed. I couldn't believe Greg was so dumb to cheat on such a nice woman. Are you finished flirting with all the women? Dr. Victor inquired. I'd like to get back to work if you don't mind. Works for me, I replied. But how are we going to get back? No problem. We'll take care of that for you, Agent Cole stated from behind. After all, we're the ones who brought you here at Dr. Victor's insistence. I sat down in the wheelchair, and Cole drove me out to the car, where we all climbed in. Actually, I was relieved to have the wheelchair. I'd been up and down much of the day and was feeling fatigued and achy. We returned to the facility, and Dr. Victor wheeled me into my room, where Megan waited for me. After supper, she helped me get ready for bed before going into the bathroom to change into her sleepwear, which was actually a long t-shirt. How are you feeling? She inquired as she slid into bed with me, wiped out. It's been a long day, I explained. She kissed me and rested her head against my shoulder. Yes, it has, she replied. I realize it has been difficult, but it had to be done. Now you can start putting all of that behind you, and I'll be here to assist you in any way I can. Before I spoke, I took a long look at her face. I said, I love you, Megan, without thinking. She smiled softly and kissed my lips. And I love you, Ethan, she added. She rested her head on my shoulder and draped an arm across my chest. I felt happier than I had been in a long time. We soon fell asleep together. They exhausted me over the next 5 weeks. In drill instructor mode, encouraged me to go farther and quicker with each session. On top of that, I was seeing the counselor twice a week to help me overcome the trauma I had experienced the previous year. Every day, they took x-rays to determine the condition of my spine. Megan stayed every night in my bed and we grew to know each other rather well. Finally, Dr. Victor said that I had recovered sufficiently to be sent home. By then, my body was in better shape than it had ever been, but Doctor told me to avoid strenuous exertion for another 3 weeks. He also scheduled me to come in twice a month for the following year so they could check my back. I was eager to get home, but I also knew I'd miss Megan. On the day I was supposed to leave, I wrote her a note in which I expressed my feelings for her. I also offered her to come visit me whenever she wanted. I finished the note as Dr. Victor entered my room in a wheelchair. I stared at him, puzzled. After all, I could already walk on my own. He shrugged his shoulders. Regulations, he stated. I understand. As I sat in the wheelchair, I wished I'd never have to use one again. He pushed me to the pickup location outside and I glanced about while waiting for the Arrowhead van. Instead, I noticed a dark blue Toyota RAV4 pulling up. The driver's side door opened, revealing Megan, my red-headed angel of compassion. She came around to open the passenger door for me. Surprised, I stared at Dr. Victor. Megan has a new assignment, he announced with a smile. She'll be your live-in caretaker, that is, unless you have any objections. Absolutely not, I answered, smiling. I shook his hand. Thank you, Dr. Victor, for everything. You're welcome, he replied with a smile. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. He stared at Megan. Please take care of our boy, okay? I will, she replied with a smile. After assisting me inside, she got into the automobile. I noticed numerous luggage had been stuffed into the back of the car. So how long are you going to be assigned to me? I asked. It depends on how long you need me. How long do you think that will be? Conservative estimate. I would say at least 60 years, I responded. Is that okay with you? Darn straight it is, I replied. She kissed me on the lips before pulling away and heading home. When we went home, I marked the calendar with the day Dr. Victor indicated I could resume normal activities. As it turned out, that was the day after my divorce from Laura was finalized. CEA met and married a doctor 2 years after her divorce. I never visited Laura in prison, but I did understand that she was undergoing treatment. After 15 years, she was freed on parole and worked as a server at a truck stop cafe on the highway. Megan and I married around 6 months after my divorce was finalized, which was a good thing because she told me a few weeks after we returned from our honeymoon that we were expecting children. We had 2 more children after that and felt that was sufficient for the time being. Our love for one another remained strong, and when our youngest child departed for college, we celebrated with an around-the-world trip. Even after all these years, she remains my gorgeous red-headed angel of mercy. My vertebrae strengthened, and it appeared that I was in better shape than I had ever been. The implants also worked, and all of the nerve damage I had sustained from the accident was reversed. Dr. Victor successfully repeated the operation multiple times over the next 10 years, and the treatment is now awaiting final approval. As I reflect on my life, I can't help but think of John Milton's quote, "Every cloud has a silver lining." Yes, I went through hell for a year after that truck hit me. It was my dark cloud. But what I have today is better than any silver lining.